Chapter 1. Initial Planning. Sun Tzu said, "War is a matter of great importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, the way to survival or destruction, and it must be carefully examined. Therefore, it is analyzed through five essential factors, which must be evaluated in planning and checked against the current situation. These five factors are 1. The just cause. Da. The just cause refers to the unity between the ruler and the people. When the people and the ruler share the same purpose, they will follow the ruler without fear, even in the face of death. This is the foundation of strong leadership and loyalty. 2. Heaven. Heaven refers to the natural forces that affect warfare, such as the balance of yin and yang, the weather, the seasons, and timing. Understanding the influence of these factors is crucial for planning and success in battle. 3. Earth. Earth refers to the terrain and geographical factors that affect military operations. This includes the physical features of the land, such as elevation, distance, and the advantages or disadvantages of different locations. Understanding the geography helps in choosing favorable positions and avoiding unnecessary risks. 4. The commander. The commander is the leader of the military. They must possess wisdom, sincerity, courage, and strictness. A commander's personal qualities greatly impact the success of the army and the effectiveness of the strategy. The 5. Method and discipline. Method and discipline involve the organization and structure of the army. This includes the rules, the way commands are given, the coordination between different units, and the proper use of resources. A well-disciplined and organized army is essential for executing successful strategies. A successful commander must be aware of all these five factors. If the commander understands them, they will win. If they do not, they will lose. Therefore, it is important to evaluate the situation by asking the following questions. Who has the just cause? Who is the most capable commander? Who has the advantage in terms of heaven and earth? Who has the best method and discipline? Which army is stronger? Which soldiers are better trained? Which side has clear rewards and punishments? By answering these questions, one can predict the outcome of the battle. If the commander listens to my plan, he will surely win. If he does not listen, he will surely lose. The plan must be listened to, and the situation must be shaped accordingly. The situation is based on exploiting advantages and gaining power. War is based on deception. Therefore, show the enemy you are incapable when you are capable, and show them you are capable when you are not. Appear far when you are near, and appear near when you are far. Lure them with advantages, attack them when they are in confusion, be prepared when they are unprepared, avoid them when they are strong, strike when they are angry, provoke them when they are proud, exhaust them when they are relaxed, and separate them when they are close. Attack where they are unprepared and appear where they least expect it. This is the way to victory in war, and it cannot be passed on prematurely. Before the battle, the one who has made thorough calculations and has more plans will win. The one who has not made sufficient plans will lose. More calculations lead to victory, fewer calculations lead to defeat, and no calculations at all lead to disaster. Based on this, we can foresee the outcome. 1. The Jusican Revolutionary War, 775 to 783. The American Revolutionary War is one of the key examples of the just cause. This war was not simply a military conflict, but one with deep political and social significance. The American colonists, frustrated by British oppression and excessive taxation, declared independence. Their fight was not driven by military advantage or economic gain alone, but was rooted in the just cause of defending their freedom and rights. Background and causes. In the mid-18th century, the British colonies in North America were already quite prosperous. However, the British government, seeking economic gain, imposed heavy taxes and strict trade restrictions on the colonies. The 1765 Stamp Act and the 1773 Tea Act were particularly infuriating to the colonists. They opposed taxation without representation and resented the lack of political rights. In response to these measures, the colonists resolved to fight for their rights and freedoms. The Boston Tea Party of 1773, when colonists dumped British tea into Boston Harbor to protest the Tea Act, became the catalyst for the revolution. It was a bold act of defiance that marked the beginning of the American fight for independence. Declaration of Independence and Just Cause. In 1776, the 13 American colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence, formally severing their ties with Britain. The Declaration emphasized that their struggle was not for mere economic interests, but for fundamental human rights and freedom. It stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The colonists fought not just for military victory, but to protect and secure these universal values of liberty and democracy. The War and Victory. The American Revolutionary War was not merely a military battle. It was a struggle grounded in the colonists' firm belief in their just cause. Although the British military was stronger, the American forces were united by a clear and compelling reason for their fight. Those who fight for a just cause have an unwavering determination that sustains them. The American forces were determined not just to win a war, but to defend their liberty and rights. Despite being outnumbered and under-equipped, the American forces were able to secure victories, notably with the help of French support. The Battle of Yorktown in 1781 marked a decisive turning point, leading to the British surrender. The victory was not just the result of military strength, but of the strong commitment to a just cause that the Americans carried throughout the war. Conclusion. The victory in the American Revolutionary War was not solely due to military superiority. The colonists' firm belief that their cause was just provided them with the unity and resolve to continue fighting, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They were not just fighting for military success, but for the protection of their freedom and rights. The just cause was the driving force behind the revolution and played a crucial role in the eventual victory. This example shows how a just cause can lead to triumph, even against seemingly insurmountable challenges. Social movements, Civil Rights Movement, 1960s. The Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s in the United States is a prominent example of the just cause, a struggle for racial equality and justice. The movement aimed to secure equal rights for African Americans, and their just cause was clear: to fight against racial discrimination and social inequality. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. played a central role in peacefully advocating for change, and their just cause ultimately led to significant societal transformation. Background. In the mid-20th century, African Americans, especially in the southern United States, were subjected to severe racial discrimination. Segregation in public facilities, a discriminatory educational system, disenfranchisement, and workplace inequality were widespread. The systemic injustice faced by African Americans fueled a growing demand for equality. As a result, a wide coalition of individuals and groups began pushing for social change. Martin Luther King Jr. and nonviolent resistance. One of the most influential leaders in the civil rights movement was Martin Luther King Jr. King firmly believed in nonviolent resistance to combat the injustices of racism, and his approach became a symbol of the movement's just cause. His philosophy was rooted in the belief that it was possible to correct societal wrongs without resorting to violence, which inspired countless others to join the cause. King's most famous speech, "I Have a Dream," encapsulated the movement's vision for a future of racial equality, where people of all races would live together in harmony. He dreamed of a world where individuals were judged by their character, not the color of their skin. For King, the just cause was not just about securing equal rights for African Americans, but about upholding the dignity and rights of all people, regardless of race. The just cause's legitimacy. The just cause of the civil rights movement was not merely a fight for personal or group interests. It was a struggle rooted in moral and legal justice. The demand for equality was not a mere grievance. It was a legitimate and justified plea for fairness and the protection of fundamental human rights. The cause resonated not only with African Americans, but also with individuals of all backgrounds who believed in justice, freedom, and equality. What made the civil rights movement's cause so powerful was its moral foundation. The demands for desegregation, the right to vote, equal education, and access to public services were all grounded in principles of fairness and human dignity. These were not arbitrary requests, but rights that were denied to African Americans solely because of their race. The just nature of the cause gave the movement immense moral authority and legitimacy. Social change and the impact of the just cause. The civil rights movement was not just a series of protests. It was a deeply transformative force that reshaped American society. The movement was about more than simply challenging physical barriers or discriminatory laws. It was about winning the hearts and minds of people, ensuring that justice and equality prevailed. King's nonviolent approach, combined with the compelling just cause, mobilized thousands of individuals, and it had a profound effect on U.S. law and society. The passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 marked significant milestones in the legal fight against racial discrimination, granting African Americans equal access to public services and voting rights. These laws were not just the results of legal battles, but the manifestation of the power of a righteous cause backed by moral and public support. The ongoing legacy of the just cause. The influence of the civil rights movement continues to resonate today. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of equality and justice remains a guiding light for many modern social justice movements. For instance, the Black Lives Matter movement, which emerged in the 21st century, builds upon the principles established by the civil rights movement. It addresses issues such as police brutality and systemic racism, fighting for the rights of African Americans and other marginalized communities. This ongoing fight is a testament to the enduring power of the just cause. The legitimacy of their cause, the demand for fairness, equality, and dignity, was not just a product of its time, but continues to inspire and mobilize people around the world. The civil rights movement serves as a powerful reminder that a righteous cause, based on justice and equality, can lead to profound and lasting change. 2. Heaven, tin, and earth, D. Napoleon's campaign of 1812. Napoleon's Russian campaign of 1812 is a classic example of the concepts of heaven and earth T in Sun Tzu's The Art of War. In Sun Tzu's framework, heaven refers to natural forces such as weather, timing, and seasons, while earth refers to terrain, environment, and positioning. Napoleon's failure in Russia can be attributed to his misjudgment of both heaven and earth, which ultimately led to his army's defeat. This case illustrates how critical these two elements are in warfare. Heaven, tin, weather, and seasons. In The Art of War, heaven is one of the most important factors influencing the outcome of a battle. It encompasses natural forces such as weather, the seasons, and timing. Napoleon's decision to invade Russia during the summer of 1812 failed to take into account the brutal Russian winter that would soon follow. Um, the French army, though initially advancing with great speed, was ill prepared for the extreme cold, which played a decisive role in the failure of the campaign. Weather in the winter. Napoleon's forces, which had been marching through the summer months, that faced the severe Russian winter unprepared. Heaven, as described in The Art of War, is about understanding the timing and natural conditions, and Napoleon did not heed this warning. The cold temperatures were far beyond what the French army could withstand. The soldiers suffered from frostbite, exhaustion, and malnutrition, and many died due to the freezing conditions. This led to a severe decrease in the morale of the troops, with many soldiers succumbing to the elements. The Russian winter was not just a matter of cold temperatures, it was a strategic weapon in itself. The Russian winter had a profound effect on the French army, slowing their movement and disrupting their supply lines. This directly aligns with Sun Tzu's notion of heaven, which highlights the importance of adapting to natural conditions in war. Napoleon failed to understand the significance of the Russian climate, leading to disastrous results for his army. Shirt Earth D. Terrain and environment. Sun Tzu also emphasizes the importance of earth, which refers to understanding the terrain, environment, and the strategic advantage of the geographical landscape. Napoleon's Russian campaign further illustrates how a failure to understand earth can lead to catastrophic consequences. Vastness and logistics. Russia is a vast country with enormous distances and varied terrain. Napoleon's forces were not prepared for the logistical challenges of marching across such a huge landmass. The vastness of Russia's flat plains and sparse infrastructure made it difficult for Napoleon's army to maintain supply lines. As the French advanced deeper into Russian territory, the terrain itself became a challenge. The further they advanced, the more their supply lines were stretched, and the harder it became to get supplies and reinforcements. This situation perfectly embodies Earth, where terrain and logistical challenges play a pivotal role in warfare. Additionally, Napoleon's decision to pursue the Russian army deeper into the country exposed his forces to the scorched earth tactics employed by the Russians. As the Russian army retreated, they burned crops and destroyed infrastructure, denying the French army critical resources. This made the French army vulnerable and unable to replenish their supplies, further compounding their logistical problems. Sun Tzu's Earth teaches that understanding the terrain is vital to ensuring a successful campaign, and Napoleon's failure to comprehend the vastness and challenges of Russian terrain was a major factor in his downfall. Stepsha, the weather and terrain combined. The Russian winter and the vast Russian plains worked together to cripple Napoleon's forces. Sun Tzu emphasizes that understanding the relationship between heaven, weather, and earth, terrain, is essential in warfare. In this case, the combination of the brutal winter and the vast, empty landscapes of Russia created a hostile environment for Napoleon's army. The terrain made it difficult for them to advance, while the weather made survival increasingly impossible. Conclusion. Napoleon's Russian campaign of 1812 offers a clear example of the importance of heaven, Tian, and earth in military strategy. The failure to account for the weather and climate of Russia, heaven, and the logistical and geographical challenges posed by the Russian terrain, earth, were key factors in Napoleon's defeat. According to Sun Tzu, success in warfare depends on adapting to and understanding the forces of nature, heaven, and the environment, earth. Napoleon's downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the need for proper strategic planning, especially when dealing with natural forces and terrain. The failure to understand these elements can lead to disastrous consequences, as it did for Napoleon. 1. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Leadership in D4. One of the most significant examples of a commander determining the outcome of a war is General Dwight D. Eisenhower's leadership during the D-Day invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. This pivotal moment in World War II showcased Eisenhower's possession of wisdom, sincerity, courage, and strictness, the virtues that Sun Tzu describes as essential for a commander. Wisdom, strategic planning, and coordination. Eisenhower demonstrated extraordinary wisdom by coordinating one of the largest and most complex military operations in history. He oversaw the planning and execution of Operation Overlord, which required the synchronization of Allied forces from the United States, Britain, Canada, and other nations. Eisenhower's strategic acumen was evident in his ability to manage the logistics of deploying over 156,000 troops, thousands of aircraft, and naval vessels across the English Channel. His careful selection of Normandy's beaches as the invasion point, despite their heavy fortifications, was a calculated decision that balanced risk and opportunity. His adaptability and foresight ensured that the operation succeeded even in the face of immense challenges. Sincerity, building trust among allies. Eisenhower's sincerity was crucial in uniting a coalition of nations with different priorities and perspectives. His ability to foster trust and collaboration among Allied leaders such as Winston Churchill, Charles de Gaulle, and Franklin D. Roosevelt helped maintain unity. He was known for his straightforward communication style and honesty, which earned him the respect of both his peers and subordinates. This sincerity was vital in convincing his troops to commit to the daunting task ahead and inspired confidence in the mission. Courage, taking responsibility for high stakes. The success of D-Day hinged on Eisenhower's courage to make difficult decisions under immense pressure. Bad weather nearly forced the postponement of the invasion, but Eisenhower took the bold step of giving the go-ahead on June 6th, relying on a narrow window of favorable conditions. Eisenhower also prepared for the worst-case scenario. Before the invasion, he wrote a letter accepting full responsibility in case of failure, demonstrating both courage and humility. His willingness to bear the burden of potential failure was a testament to his strength as a leader. Strictness, discipline, and execution. Eisenhower's strictness ensured that every aspect of the operation was meticulously planned and executed. He demanded high standards of discipline from his troops and commanders, knowing that any weakness could jeopardize the mission. He was also firm in maintaining secrecy and operational security, preventing leaks that could have alerted German forces. His insistence on rigorous training and preparation ensured that the Allied forces were ready to face the challenges of the invasion. Outcome: victory in Normandy. Eisenhower's leadership directly contributed to the success of the D-Day invasion, which became the turning point of World War II in Europe. The invasion breached Hitler's Atlantic Wall and opened a second front, leading to the liberation of France and eventually the defeat of Nazi Germany. Eisenhower's wisdom in planning, sincerity in uniting the Allies, courage in decision-making, and strictness in execution exemplify the qualities Sun Tzu describes as essential for a commander. His ability to embody these virtues under immense pressure is a powerful example of how a great leader can shape the course of history. 2. Admiral Yi Sun-sin. Admiral Yi Sun-sin of Joseon, Korea, exemplified the virtues of a commander as described in The Art of War during the Imjin War, 1592 to 1598. His wisdom, sincerity, courage, and strictness played a decisive role in defending Joseon against overwhelming odds. Wisdom. Strategic insight and decision-making. Yi Sun-sin demonstrated exceptional strategic acumen, enabling him to achieve victories despite facing dire circumstances. The Battle of Myeongyang. With only 12 ships, Yi defeated a Japanese fleet of over 300 vessels by utilizing the narrow straits and strong tidal currents to neutralize the enemy's numerical advantage. His innovative tactics turned a near impossible situation into a historic victory. Long-term vision. Yi prioritized not only immediate success, but also sustainability, ensuring the maintenance of ships, morale of his troops, and steady supplies to prepare for a prolonged conflict. Sincerity, dedication to his people and soldiers. Yi Sun-sin's leadership was rooted in his unwavering dedication to his country and people, earning him the loyalty and respect of his subordinates and civilians alike. Earning soldiers' trust, he valued the opinions of his subordinates and treated his troops like family. His genuine care for their welfare fostered unwavering loyalty among his ranks. Fighting for the people, Yi always prioritized minimizing civilian casualties and protecting the nation, which earned him deep respect and admiration from the public. Courage, resoluteness in the face of adversity. Yi's bravery extended beyond physical combat to his willingness to risk his life for the nation's survival. Boldness in battle. In the Battle of Myeongyang, Yi stood resolute against overwhelming odds, inspiring his troops to fight with unwavering determination. Fearlessness of death. His final moments epitomized his courage. He instructed, "Do not let the enemy know of my death," ensuring his men would maintain their resolve even after his passing. Strictness. Principled and disciplined leadership. Yi maintained discipline and upheld principles, balancing firmness with compassion, which solidified his authority and effectiveness as a leader. Enforcing military discipline. He corrected mistakes firmly, but also understood and empathized with his soldiers' struggles. This balanced approach earned their respect and commitment. Thorough preparation. Yi's meticulous planning ensured that his soldiers and fleet were always ready, fostering confidence in his leadership. Conclusion. Admiral Yi Sun-sin embodied the ideal commander described in The Art of War. His wisdom, sincerity, courage, and strictness not only led to miraculous victories, but also secured the survival of his nation during a time of existential threat. He remains an enduring symbol of exemplary leadership and strategic brilliance. 3. A cautionary tale. Renya Mutaguchi and the Battle of Imphal, 1944. Renya Mutaguchi, a commander of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II, led the infamous Imphal campaign in northeastern India in 1944. This campaign is considered one of Japan's most disastrous failures in military history. Mutaguchi's leadership starkly illustrates the consequences of lacking the essential virtues of a commander, as outlined in The Art of War: wisdom, sincerity, courage, and strictness. Lack of wisdom, poor strategic vision. Renya Mutaguchi's plans for the Imphal campaign were detached from reality and lacked strategic foresight. Ignoring geography. In The Art of War, Earth emphasizes the importance of understanding terrain and distances. Mutaguchi failed to account for the treacherous Himalayan terrain and dense jungles, leading to supply lines being cut off and soldiers suffering from starvation and disease. Unrealistic goals. He underestimated both the logistical challenges and the strength of the British Indian forces. His overconfidence and lack of adaptability doomed the campaign from the start. Lack of sincerity, loss of trust. Mutaguchi lacked the sincerity needed to inspire trust among his subordinates and superiors. Ignoring advice, his subordinate commanders repeatedly warned him about the campaign's risks and flaws. However, Mutaguchi dismissed their concerns, leading to disillusionment and a breakdown in morale. False reports. Mutaguchi consistently provided overly optimistic and misleading reports to his superiors, further eroding trust within the command structure. His unwillingness to acknowledge reality alienated his leadership team. Misguided courage, recklessness, and stubbornness. The Art of War defines courage as decisive and intelligent action, but Mutaguchi's decisions reflected recklessness rather than true bravery. Forcing unwise orders. Despite overwhelming evidence of failure, Mutaguchi ordered repeated and futile attacks, resulting in devastating casualties. Avoiding accountability. When the campaign collapsed, Mutaguchi deflected blame onto his subordinates rather than taking responsibility. His actions undermined morale and exposed his lack of true leadership. Failure of strictness, poor preparation, and discipline. The Art of War emphasizes strictness as essential for preparation and maintaining discipline, but Mutaguchi fell short in these areas. Inadequate supply lines. He neglected the critical importance of logistics, leaving his troops without sufficient food, medicine, or ammunition. Thousands of soldiers perished from starvation and disease, exacerbating the army's collapse. Disorganization and poor training. His forces were not adequately trained for the campaign's harsh conditions, and the command structure was chaotic, further contributing to failure. Outcome: a catastrophic defeat and enduring lessons. The Imphal campaign resulted in over 70,000 Japanese soldiers killed, wounded, or incapacitated. This massive loss crippled Japan's military strength in Southeast Asia and contributed to its eventual defeat in the region. Renya Mutaguchi's leadership failure serves as a stark cautionary tale about what happens when a commander lacks the essential virtues highlighted in The Art of War. His story underscores the enduring importance of strategic judgment, honest communication, responsible courage, and meticulous preparation, not only in warfare but in any form of leadership. 4. Method and discipline. 1. The Normandy invasion, a victory of method and discipline. Thorough planning and organization. The Normandy invasion was one of the most meticulously prepared military operations in history. To ensure its success, the Allied forces coordinated the cooperation of the Navy, Air Force, and Army over several months. The details of the operation, from the landing sites to troop deployments and logistics, were systematically planned. Troops were dispersed across 5 major landing beaches: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword, reducing the combat burden in each area. Prior to the landing, airstrikes and airborne operations were conducted to weaken the German defenses. Strict discipline and training. The forces involved underwent extensive training in the lead-up to the invasion, mastering coastal penetration and securing territories. Landing troops repeatedly trained in the tactics and skills needed to break through German defenses. Each unit understood its specific role and mission, adhering strictly to the command structure. Efficient resource allocation. The Allies ensured the efficient deployment of resources and personnel, gaining numerical superiority over the Germans. With the support of the Air Force and Navy, they conducted coastal operations effectively, rapidly bringing in reinforcements and supplies. Command and coordination. Under General Dwight D. Eisenhower's leadership, the Allied forces shared clear objectives and moved in harmony, each contributing to the operation's success. Despite the chaos of the invasion, especially the fierce battle at Omaha Beach, the units executed their missions according to the command structure and training. Result: a successful example of method and discipline. The Normandy invasion, known as D-Day, took place on June 6, 1944, and became the foundation for the Allies' advance into Western Europe. On that single day, about 150,000 troops successfully secured the beaches and broke through the German defenses. This operation turned the tide of World War II, eventually leading to Germany's surrender. Conclusion: the success of the Normandy invasion illustrates the critical importance of method and discipline. Meticulous planning, strict discipline, and the efficient allocation of resources proved to be essential factors in achieving victory in warfare. 2. A corporate success example: Apple's transformation under Steve Jobs. Strategic planning and organization. When Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the company was struggling with products that lacked innovation and a clear direction. Jobs implemented a disciplined method of focus by reducing the company's product line, concentrating on just a few key products to ensure they received the attention and development they needed. This focus on fewer, higher quality products allowed Apple to streamline operations and reduce complexity within the company. Strict discipline and efficiency. Jobs was known for his relentless pursuit of perfection and discipline within his teams. He set high standards for both product development and employee performance. This commitment to excellence extended from design to customer service. Every detail mattered, and employees were expected to adhere to a rigorous set of standards. Under his leadership, Apple developed a culture where discipline was crucial in every aspect of the company, from product design to the retail experience. Command and coordination. Jobs' ability to coordinate efforts across different departments was another example of method and discipline at work. He was deeply involved in product development, often bringing together teams of engineers, designers, and marketers to ensure that Apple products were not only functional but also aesthetically appealing. His management style was hands-on, ensuring that every part of the process worked in unison to deliver a superior product. Efficient use of resources. Apple's success also came from its effective use of resources, both human and financial. Jobs focused on creating products that were not only groundbreaking, but also feasible within the company's budget. Through efficient management and careful resource allocation, Apple maximized the potential of its teams, ensuring the company could innovate while maintaining profitability. Result: a corporate success of method and discipline. Under Steve Jobs' leadership, Apple transformed from a struggling company into one of the most valuable and innovative companies in the world. The introduction of products like the iPod, iPhone, and MacBook revolutionized entire industries, setting new standards for technology, design, and user experience. Conclusion: Apple's success story demonstrates the power of method and discipline in achieving corporate success. Through meticulous planning, strict discipline, efficient use of resources, and strong coordination, Jobs and his team created a company that redefined the tech industry and continues to influence businesses worldwide. 5. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes that war is a matter of life and death, requiring careful planning based on 5 key factors: just cause, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline. While success depends on thorough calculations, strategic deception, and exploiting advantages to shape the situation and predict the outcome. Chapter 2: Resource Management. Sun Tzu said, "In warfare, when deploying a force, the costs are significant. For an army of 100,000 soldiers, you would need a large number of swift chariots, heavy chariots, and soldiers wearing armor. The supply chains for provisions must be extensive enough to cover a journey of 1,000 miles. The expenses involved, including food, materials, guests, and equipment, can amount to a daily expenditure of 1,000 ounces of silver. This is the cost of mobilizing such a large force. In war, the ultimate goal is victory. If a battle drags on, the weapons will become dull and the morale of the soldiers will weaken. If you lay siege to a city, the strain will exhaust your forces. Similarly, if the war continues for too long, the state's resources will become insufficient to sustain the effort. When weapons lose their sharpness, strength is drained, and treasures are exhausted, other states will take advantage of your weakness. Even the most intelligent leaders cannot prevent the inevitable consequences that follow. While there may be instances of hasty decisions in war, there has never been any success in prolonged delays. War should be ended swiftly, as prolonged warfare brings ruin. Only by understanding the harmful effects of war can one fully appreciate the benefits of swift action. A skilled general avoids the need for additional reinforcements or returning to restock supplies. Instead, the army takes what it needs from the enemy, ensuring that their resources are sufficient. If the state is too poor to support an army, the soldiers' provisions must come from far off places, which places a heavy burden on the people. When the army is close, prices rise, draining the wealth of the people, and the financial strain leads to more burdens on the citizens. The people's expenses can reach a staggering 70% of their income, while the state's costs, such as for broken chariots, worn out horses, and damaged equipment, can consume up to 60% of its resources. Therefore, a wise commander focuses on foraging from the enemy. Taking one cart of the enemy's supplies can be as valuable as taking 20 from one's own resources. In battle, killing the enemy should be driven by anger, but taking advantage of the enemy's resources is what yields rewards. In chariot battles, if you capture 10 or more enemy chariots, those who captured them should be rewarded, and the captured chariots should be integrated into your own forces. This strengthens your army while using the enemy's resources. In summary, the goal of war is not to drag it out, but to win swiftly. The leader of an army holds the fate of the people in their hands, determining whether the nation will enjoy peace or face destruction. 1. The war economy of ancient Rome. 1. Military operations and economic support. Ancient Rome's war economy was crucial to its continuous military campaigns. The empire's ability to sustain prolonged wars relied on an efficient economic system that could provide the necessary resources for the army. The Roman military, composed of cavalry, infantry, and artillery, required large amounts of supplies such as weapons, armor, and transportation. To support this, Rome used its agricultural, commercial, and taxation systems effectively. Even during constant warfare, the empire managed to maintain a stable supply chain to meet the needs of its army. 2. Agriculture and productivity. Agriculture was the backbone of the Roman economy, particularly when it came to providing food and resources for the military. The Romans implemented advanced agricultural techniques and systems to increase production. Large estates, known as latifundia, and smaller agricultural communities were key to maintaining a steady supply of food. These estates were often worked by slaves or prisoners of war, and they were able to produce large quantities of grain, meat, wine, and oil, all of which were crucial for feeding the army. The Roman agricultural system ensured that soldiers were adequately supplied with food, while the empire also had access to surplus resources for wartime needs. 3. Metal resources and weapon production. Rome's ability to wage war successfully also depended on its access to metal resources. Iron, copper, and tin were essential for producing weapons and armor. Rome maintained an extensive mining operation across its empire to secure these resources. The Roman military relied on the production of high-quality weapons, such as swords, shields, and armor, which were crafted from these metals. In addition, the Romans developed large-scale military factories to mass-produce weapons and armor, ensuring that the army was always well equipped. This efficient metal production system was crucial in maintaining Roman military strength. Number 4. The relationship between Roman citizens and the military. The Roman army was primarily composed of Roman citizens, and this relationship was central to the success of Roman warfare. Roman citizens served in the military and were compensated with pay, land grants, and the spoils of war. This incentivized the Roman populace to support and participate in military campaigns. Furthermore, the Romans used alliances with other peoples and states to augment their military strength. These alliances allowed Rome to access additional resources and bolster its army, which was often crucial during large-scale wars. 5. Taxation and resource redistribution. Rome's taxation system played a critical role in supporting its war economy. The empire collected taxes from its provinces in the form of agricultural produce, metals, and commercial goods. These taxes were used to fund military campaigns, build infrastructure, and ensure that the Roman army had the resources it needed. Tax collection was central to Rome's ability to manage resources across its vast empire. This centralization allowed Rome to quickly mobilize resources for military operations and maintain a strong defense. 6. Roman supply lines and logistics. Securing reliable supply lines was essential to Roman military success. Roman military campaigns could only be sustained if the supply lines were stable and efficient. The Roman army built an extensive network of roads and forward supply bases to ensure that resources could be transported to the front lines quickly and efficiently. Additionally, special logistical units were tasked with transporting food, weapons, and other materials to the army. The careful management of these supply lines ensured that Roman forces could maintain operational readiness even during extended campaigns. Number 7. Loot and economic recompense. Roman warfare was often financially rewarding due to the looting of conquered territories. The spoils of war, such as gold, silver, and goods, were rapidly seized and redistributed. These resources were used to finance further military campaigns, and they were also shared with Roman citizens and soldiers as rewards for their service. This system of distributing loot not only incentivized military service, but also strengthened the Roman economy by integrating wealth gained from warfare back into the empire's economy. Conclusion. The war economy of ancient Rome was a sophisticated and highly organized system that allowed the empire to sustain its military campaigns over several centuries. By managing agricultural production, securing metal resources, developing efficient taxation and logistics systems, and utilizing spoils of war, Rome created a model that enabled it to wage war continuously while maintaining a strong and stable economy. This ability to efficiently manage resources was a key factor in the success and longevity of the Roman Empire. 2. The Afghanistan War 2001-21 and resource management. The Afghanistan War, spanning from 2001 to 2021, provides a notable example of the importance of resource management in modern warfare. 1. Difficult terrain and supply line issues. One of the central challenges faced by the U.S. military in Afghanistan was operating in a geographically isolated region with difficult terrain. The mountainous landscape and the absence of nearby friendly states with which to share borders created significant difficulties in maintaining supply lines. This situation aligns closely with Sun Tzu's observation that long campaigns are expensive and drain resources. The U.S. military was forced to maintain extended supply chains over vast distances, which placed a huge strain on both logistical operations and the overall war effort. This led to delays, inefficiencies, and higher costs. 2. The strain on resources and the prolonged conflict. As Sun Tzu warns, a prolonged war leads to depletion of resources and makes the state vulnerable to external threats. The Afghanistan War, which lasted for 2 decades, placed an enormous burden on both the U.S. military and its allies, causing substantial wear and tear on military equipment, vehicles, and personnel. The costs of maintaining a military presence in Afghanistan were immense, with the U.S. alone spending over $2 trillion on the war, including military operations, reconstruction, and aid efforts. The long duration of the conflict exacerbated resource scarcity, particularly as the war dragged on and support for it waned among both military and civilian populations. Number 3, multiple nations and resource allocation issues. Another key aspect of the Afghanistan war was the involvement of multiple countries in coalition forces. Many of these countries struggled with effective resource management and distribution. The challenge of coordinating efforts among so many nations, with varying military capabilities, logistical systems, and priorities, resulted in inefficient use of resources. As Sun Tzu notes, when your weapons are dulled, your ardor damped, your strength exhausted, and your treasure spent, other chieftains will spring up to take advantage of your extremity. In the case of Afghanistan, the prolonged nature of the war, combined with the difficulty of managing a multinational coalition, led to diminishing returns and, in some instances, the rise of regional powers who sought to assert their influence in the region. Number 4, impact on the local economy and population. The local economy and population of Afghanistan also bore the brunt of the war's resource demands. The diversion of resources for military purposes had a profound impact on the civilian population. much like the resource depletion discussed by Sun Tzu. The war destroyed much of the country's infrastructure, disrupted local industries, and led to widespread poverty. Additionally, the heavy reliance on military contractors, foreign aid, and the drug trade created a cycle of dependency where local populations were unable to sustain themselves due to the overwhelming focus on military objectives and the international aid flow. 5. Depletion of manpower and equipment. The cost of war in Afghanistan also affected the military's manpower and equipment, which parallels Sun Tzu's advice about the negative impact of a protracted conflict. The repeated rotations of troops, the toll on soldiers' morale, and the constant need for repairs and replacements of military equipment led to a gradual depletion of human and material resources. The US and NATO forces spent billions of dollars maintaining and replacing military equipment, such as Humvees, helicopters, and drones. This constant expenditure of resources, combined with the inability to achieve a decisive victory, mirrored the situation described by Sun Tzu, where extended warfare leads to exhaustion and depletion of resources. Conclusion. The Afghanistan War serves as a modern example of the critical importance of managing resources and avoiding prolonged conflict, as emphasized in Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The difficulties faced by the US and its allies in maintaining supply lines, managing costs, and coordinating multinational forces underline the wisdom of Sun Tzu's advice that long wars deplete resources and weaken the military. The Afghanistan conflict demonstrates how resource management, or the lack thereof, can directly influence the success or failure of a military campaign, and how a prolonged conflict can stretch both financial and human resources to their breaking point. 3. Limitations of utilizing enemy resources in conventional warfare. Sun Tzu's concept of utilizing enemy resources was highly effective in ancient warfare, where captured supplies could be directly repurposed to benefit the conquering army. However, in modern warfare, the practicality of this principle is significantly constrained by various factors, such as technological advancements, international law, and the nature of modern conflicts. Number 1. Technological complexity of modern military equipment. In ancient times, the weapons and supplies used in battle were relatively simple and could be easily reused or repurposed. For example, a captured sword, chariot, or armor could be immediately utilized with little modification. In contrast, modern military equipment is highly complex. Tanks, fighter jets, and missiles are specialized and require specific parts and maintenance. These systems are often incompatible with those of the enemy, making it difficult, if not impossible, to immediately use captured resources. For instance, a captured fighter jet may not be operational unless the capturing force has the required parts, trained personnel, and infrastructure to maintain and operate it. This drastically reduces the immediate value of enemy resources in modern warfare. Number 2. Destruction of resources to prevent exploitation. One key strategy in modern warfare is the destruction of resources before they can be captured. Strategic withdrawals often involve destroying infrastructure such as fuel depots, factories, and military equipment to prevent the enemy from accessing them. A notable example of this occurred during the Gulf War when Iraqi forces set fire to Kuwaiti oil wells as they retreated, making it impossible for coalition forces to use the oil. This deliberate destruction ensures that even if the enemy captures territory or strategic positions, the resources there are rendered unusable. 3. International laws and ethical considerations. Modern conflicts are governed by international laws such as the Geneva Conventions, which prohibit the looting or exploitation of civilian resources. The capture and exploitation of civilian infrastructure or non-military assets would not only be considered illegal, but could also lead to significant political repercussions. Actions that harm civilian populations can undermine the legitimacy of a military operation and lead to a loss of support from the international community. This makes it much more difficult to follow Sun Tzu's advice in its original form, which often involved plundering civilian resources or directly seizing enemy supplies. Number 4. Logistical and supply chain systems. Modern armies rely on highly organized and extensive supply chains rather than directly acquiring enemy resources. Supply chains for food, ammunition, medical supplies, and fuel are robust and operate independently of enemy territory. These supply lines are often protected and maintained by airlifts, convoys, and maritime routes, allowing armies to remain self sufficient. For example, the U.S. military relies on advanced logistical operations capable of delivering supplies globally, reducing the need to capture enemy resources. The modern focus is on securing consistent supply lines rather than relying on seized materials. 5. Economic and strategic limitations. While capturing enemy resources may offer short term advantages, it is not a sustainable strategy in modern warfare. Modern conflicts, especially those involving asymmetric warfare or guerrilla tactics, often focus on disrupting enemy supply chains and infrastructure rather than resource acquisition. The long term costs of capturing and maintaining enemy resources can outweigh the immediate benefits. In many cases, it is more efficient for a modern army to disrupt the enemy's ability to produce or transport resources than to capture and sustain their own supply of enemy resources. Conclusion: modern constraints on resource utilization. While utilizing enemy resources was a central concept in ancient warfare, modern warfare presents significant limitations to this strategy. The technological complexity of military systems, the destruction of resources by retreating forces, international law constraints, and reliance on secure logistical supply chains make the direct exploitation of enemy resources impractical in most modern conflicts. Instead, modern armies prioritize strategic disruption of the enemy's infrastructure and supply chains while maintaining self sufficiency through their own resources and logistics. Ultimately, while the spirit of Sun Tzu's advice remains relevant, the direct application of utilizing enemy resources is far more limited in contemporary warfare. The effectiveness of utilizing enemy resources in civil wars and guerrilla warfare. In contrast to conventional warfare, the utilization of enemy resources remains highly relevant in civil wars and guerrilla warfare. These forms of conflict are characterized by smaller scale engagements, often with irregular forces, where capturing and using enemy resources can provide a crucial advantage. In civil wars, where government forces fight against insurgents, the ability of insurgents to capture and repurpose enemy resources can be vital for their survival and continued resistance. Guerrilla forces often rely on seizing weapons, food, and supplies from the enemy to maintain their operations. These resources are critical for sustaining their ability to fight and continue operations. Similarly, in guerrilla warfare, where combat is often asymmetric, capturing enemy resources, whether they are weapons, food, or ammunition, is an essential strategy. Unlike conventional armies, guerrilla fighters may lack sufficient supply lines and infrastructure, so taking resources from the enemy is crucial to continue their resistance. In these contexts, Sun Tzu's principle of utilizing enemy resources remains highly applicable. Seizing and using enemy supplies can help sustain combat efforts and create advantages for smaller, irregular forces facing a stronger opponent. Therefore, while the direct application of this principle may be limited in conventional warfare, it continues to be a valuable strategy in civil wars and guerrilla tactics. 4. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu highlights that war is costly, draining resources and weakening armies over time. A wise general ends conflict quickly and secures resources from the enemy to sustain the army. Effective resource management is key to victory, as the leader's decisions shape the nation's future. 3. Attack by stratagem. Sun Tzu said, "In the art of war, the best strategy is to capture the enemy's country intact. Destroying it should be avoided. Similarly, it is better to capture the entire army rather than destroying it, and it is better to capture entire brigades and divisions intact rather than breaking them up. Therefore, winning every battle is not the highest skill. The highest skill is to defeat the enemy without fighting." 1. Disrupting the enemy's plans. The most effective strategy is to disrupt the enemy's plans. The next best strategy is to prevent the enemy from forming alliances. The third best is to attack the enemy while they are still on the battlefield. The least effective strategy is to besiege a city. Attacking a city should only be done when necessary. Preparing for a siege takes several months, and attacking a city without proper preparation can result in heavy losses without achieving success. 2. Defeating the enemy without fighting. A skilled commander defeats the enemy's army without fighting. captures cities without besieging them, and brings down nations without prolonged war. In doing so, the commander preserves their army and secures victory. 3. The importance of the general. A general is the cornerstone of a nation. When a general is strong and wise, the country will be strong. When the general is weak or unskilled, the country will be vulnerable. 4. 3 ways to bring misfortune to the army. There are 3 ways to bring misfortune to an army. First, when the commander does not understand that the army cannot advance or retreat, but orders them to do so, leading to confusion and inefficiency. Second, when the commander does not understand the specifics of military affairs, but treats military matters the same as political matters, causing confusion among the soldiers. Third, when the commander does not assign the right people to the right military posts, leading to a lack of trust and discipline in the army. 5. 5 ways to achieve victory. There are 5 ways to achieve victory. First, knowing when to fight and when not to fight. Second, understanding how to deal with both large and small forces. Third, ensuring that the entire army is united in purpose. Fourth, preparing to surprise the enemy. Fifth, ensuring that the military is not interfered with by the state. If you know both yourself and the enemy, you can fight 100 battles without danger. If you know yourself but not the enemy, you will win some and lose some. If you do not know yourself or the enemy, you will always be in danger in every battle. 1. Disrupting the enemy's plans. Operation Fortitude, 1944, D-Day, World War II. One of the most effective examples of disrupting the enemy's plans comes from Operation Fortitude, the Allied deception plan leading up to the D-Day landings in World War II. The Allies knew that Hitler had expected an invasion of Western Europe, but he wasn't sure where it would take place. The Allies used this uncertainty to their advantage by feeding misleading information and creating a false impression of where the main attack would land. To achieve this, the Allies set up fake armies, complete with inflatable tanks, fake radio transmissions, and false intelligence, to convince the Germans that the invasion would occur at Pas-de-Calais rather than Normandy. They even staged false maneuvers and built fake supply depots, leading the German high command to believe that the Normandy landings were a diversion. This disruption of German plans resulted in Hitler delaying the deployment of reinforcements to Normandy, which made the actual D-Day landings in Normandy successful. Instead of fighting directly with the German forces or laying siege to their positions, the Allies disrupted their plans through deception, weakening their defenses and making their invasion much easier and more effective. This operation showed disrupting the enemy's plans through misinformation and clever deception can lead to a strategic victory without the need for direct conflict. The strategy of the Qing general Zhuo Zongtang, an excellent example of defeating the enemy without fighting in Qing dynasty history, comes from Zhuo Zongtang, a renowned military strategist and statesman during the late Qing dynasty. One of his most famous instances of this strategy occurred during the reconquest of Xinjiang in 1875, when he dealt with the rebellious forces of Yaqub Beg, a leader in the western region. In the 1870s, the Qing Empire faced internal strife, with Yaqub Beg leading a rebellion in Xinjiang and threatening Qing rule. While Yaqub Beg had a well-fortified position and a powerful army, Zhuo Zongtang did not immediately engage in a direct battle with him. Instead of fighting a costly and protracted war, Zhuo Zongtang employed a combination of diplomacy, psychological warfare, and strategic deception. First, he sent emissaries to Yaqub Beg, promising safe passage and favorable terms for surrender. He also employed psychological tactics by creating rumors of a massive Qing army approaching from multiple directions. The idea was to convince Yaqub Beg that the Qing forces were much stronger than they actually were, and that surrender would be his best option. At the same time, Zhuo Zongtang began to fortify the region and establish a strong military presence in key locations, further convincing the rebels that resistance was futile. Zhuo's use of diplomatic overtures combined with his strategic positioning created a situation where Yaqub Beg's forces were demoralized and isolated, making it easier to dismantle their resistance without a large-scale military confrontation. In the end, Yaqub Beg, realizing that further resistance would lead to his destruction, surrendered to the Qing forces in 1877. The Qing military was able to regain control over Xinjiang without a prolonged battle, showcasing Zhuo Zongtang's ability to win through intelligence, diplomacy, and psychological strategy rather than brute force. This example demonstrates the effective use of non-military tactics, such as psychological warfare, diplomacy, and strategic positioning, to defeat a stronger or well-fortified enemy without resorting to extensive fighting. Zhuo Zongtang's actions in Xinjiang embodied the principle of achieving victory through deception and strategic foresight, just as Sun Tzu advocated centuries earlier. 3. Three ways to bring misfortune to the army. 1. When the commander does not understand that the army cannot advance or retreat, but orders them to do so, leading to confusion and inefficiency. Example, Napoleon's Russian campaign, 1812. Napoleon's invasion of Russia is a classic example. Napoleon overestimated the ability of his army to march deep into Russia despite the harsh winter and vast distances. As his army advanced, they faced severe supply issues, starvation, and extreme cold. Even when retreat became necessary, Napoleon continued to order the army to advance. The army became decimated due to harsh conditions, and most of it was destroyed during the retreat, leading to a disastrous failure. 2. When the commander does not understand the specifics of military affairs, but treats military matters the same as political matters, causing confusion among the soldiers. Example, the Vietnam War, Gulf of Tonkin Incident, 1964. President Lyndon B. Johnson and his administration treated the Gulf of Tonkin incident as a political tool to justify escalating U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. The initial reports about the attack on U.S. ships by North Vietnamese forces were either exaggerated or inaccurate, but the event was manipulated for political gain. The military decisions made without fully understanding the military consequences resulted in a larger and more prolonged conflict, leading to the eventual failure and withdrawal of U.S. forces from Vietnam. 3. When the commander does not assign the right people to the right military posts, leading to a lack of trust and discipline in the army. Example, the Gallipoli Campaign, 1915. The Gallipoli Campaign during World War I is a prime example of poor leadership and mismanagement. The British and French forces assigned commanders who were not well suited for the task. Some of the senior officers lacked the experience in amphibious warfare, and the commanders were unfamiliar with the local geography. These poor leadership decisions hindered the formation of an effective strategy and led to the failure of the campaign. The British and French forces suffered heavy losses, and the campaign ended in disaster. There are 5 ways to achieve victory. 1. Knowing when to fight and when not to fight. Example, Battle of Kursk, 1943, World War II. The Battle of Kursk was a large confrontation between Germany and the Soviet Union. The Soviets anticipated the German attack and strengthened their defenses, waiting for the right moment. They did not rush into battle, but instead carefully timed their counteroffensive after exhausting the German forces. By delaying the engagement and choosing when to fight, the Soviets were able to turn the tide in their favor. This example shows how knowing when to fight and when not to fight is crucial in achieving victory. 2. Understanding how to deal with both large and small forces. Example, Battle of Agincourt, 1415, Hundred Years' War. At the Battle of Agincourt, English King Henry V led a small force to defeat a much larger French army. Using longbowmen effectively, Henry's forces neutralized the French cavalry and heavy infantry. They understood how to fight a larger force by exploiting the terrain and using defensive tactics. This victory demonstrates how small forces can successfully engage larger ones by understanding the differences in strategy and adapting to the circumstances. 3. Ensuring that the entire army is united in purpose. Example, Admiral Horatio Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar, 1805. At the Battle of Trafalgar, British Admiral Horatio Nelson unified his fleet with a clear purpose to defeat the combined French and Spanish fleets. Nelson's leadership ensured that his entire fleet operated in a coordinated manner, with each ship and sailor understanding their role. This unity of purpose allowed the British to achieve a decisive victory despite being outnumbered. This example shows how an army's cohesion and shared goal are critical for success. 4. Preparing to surprise the enemy. Example, Alexander the Great at the Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BC. Alexander the Great achieved a remarkable victory over the Persian Empire at the Battle of Gaugamela by using surprise tactics. Although the Persians expected a conventional battle, Alexander feigned retreat to lure the Persian forces into a vulnerable position. He then struck with a devastating counterattack, catching the enemy off guard. This example illustrates the importance of preparing to surprise the enemy and how it can decisively impact the outcome of a battle. 5. Ensuring that the military is not interfered with by the state. Example: George Washington during the American Revolutionary War. During the American Revolutionary War, General George Washington ensured that the Continental Army was able to operate independently from political interference. While there were political pressures from the Continental Congress, Washington understood the importance of maintaining military autonomy to plan and execute long-term strategies. This allowed him to lead the army with flexibility, eventually securing American independence. The ability to keep the military separate from political interference was a key factor in his success. 5. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes defeating the enemy without fighting, using strategies like disrupting plans, preventing alliances, and exploiting weaknesses. A wise general is key to a strong nation. Victory comes from knowing when to fight, understanding forces, ensuring unity, preparing surprises, and avoiding state interference. Mastering self and enemy knowledge leads to success. Tactical dispositions. Sun Tzu said, "The best fighters of the past first make themselves unbeatable and then wait for the enemy to make a mistake, creating an opportunity for victory." The ability to defend against defeat is in our hands, but the chance to win comes from the enemy's mistakes. A good fighter ensures they cannot be defeated, but they cannot guarantee victory until the enemy provides that chance. Therefore, while victory can be anticipated, it cannot be forced. Defense is about making sure you cannot be defeated, while attacking is about trying to defeat the enemy. A good defense is secure and strong, while an attack is more challenging and risky. A skilled defender stays hidden deep underground, while a skilled attacker strikes from the highest point in the sky. This dual strategy of defense and attack allows a general to both protect themselves and achieve total victory. The true excellence in war is not about winning battles that everyone can see. A general who wins without the world knowing how or why has mastered the art of war. A skilled fighter does not seek fame for their wisdom or bravery. They win without mistakes and in a way that no one notices. Their victory comes from perfect strategy where they ensure their opponent is already defeated before the battle even starts. A victorious army is one that wins even before the battle begins, while a defeated army fights first and seeks victory only after. A good general follows principles, adheres to method, and maintains discipline, giving them the ability to control the outcome of the battle. There are 5 key elements to military strategy: measurement, estimation of quantity, calculation, balancing of chances, and victory. These elements build upon one another. Measurement leads to estimation, which leads to calculation, and so on until victory is achieved. A victorious army is as much stronger than a defeated one as a pound is heavier than a grain, and a powerful army floods the battlefield like water bursting from a dam. The Battle of the Granicus River, 134 BC. Alexander the Great. Background. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great faced the Persian forces at the Granicus River in Asia Minor. The Persian army was larger and well prepared, but Alexander, who had just begun his campaign to conquer the Persian Empire, had to secure an advantage before the battle began. He knew that merely relying on numerical superiority would not guarantee victory, so he focused on preparation, strategy, and using the enemy's weaknesses to his advantage. Strategic preparation. Before the battle, Alexander ensured his forces were positioned in a way that would give them the upper hand even before the fighting began. 1. Deception and tactical positioning. Alexander understood the importance of luring the Persian army into a vulnerable position. The Persian general Memnon of Rhodes had stationed his forces along the riverbank, thinking it would be a strong defensive position. However, Alexander's strategy involved using his cavalry and elite forces to feign a retreat, drawing the Persian forces into disarray. By baiting the Persians into advancing toward his apparent retreating forces, Alexander set the stage for a devastating counterattack. 2. Exploiting the terrain. The terrain was crucial to the battle's outcome. The Granicus River had natural features that Alexander used to his advantage. He placed his forces on higher ground and avoided direct confrontations in unfavorable terrain. The Persian forces were spread out across the riverbank, while Alexander concentrated his forces on the opposite side, where he had more control and better maneuverability. 3. Control of the battlefield. The key to Alexander's victory was his ability to control the flow of the battle. While the Persian forces appeared confident in their defensive position, Alexander carefully manipulated the battlefield. He waited for the right moment to strike when the Persians were spread out and vulnerable. His forces, particularly the Macedonian cavalry, were highly mobile and able to maneuver around the Persians, hitting them at weak points in their formation. Execution of the battle. When the battle began, Alexander's forces executed a swift and overwhelming assault. His cavalry, positioned on the flanks, launched a crushing attack on the Persian forces, cutting through their ranks and creating confusion. The Persian army, caught off guard and unable to reform their lines, was quickly overwhelmed. Alexander himself led the charge, personally engaging in the thick of the battle. His strategic placement of forces, along with the use of deception and terrain, ensured that his army maintained the advantage. The Persians were not only defeated but also forced to retreat, leaving their positions unprotected. Key takeaway: Alexander's victory at the Battle of the Granicus River demonstrates the principle that victory can be secured before the battle begins by ensuring superior positioning, exploiting the enemy's weaknesses, and controlling the battlefield. Alexander did not rely on chance or brute force alone. He created the conditions for victory by preparing his forces and the battlefield meticulously. Deception. He used the element of surprise and strategic feints to mislead the Persian forces, causing them to spread out and expose weaknesses. Control of terrain. By positioning his forces advantageously, Alexander ensured his forces could maneuver more freely, while the Persians were restricted by the river and their defensive positions. Concentration of force. When the time came, Alexander's army struck decisively and swiftly, exploiting the disarray within the Persian ranks. In this way, Alexander the Great ensured that by the time the battle started, his forces already held the advantage and the victory was all but assured. Strategic business competition. Background: in the early 2000s, Apple and Microsoft were two dominant forces in the tech industry, but they were positioned very differently. While Microsoft was focused on the software market with Windows and Office dominating the PC industry, Apple was transitioning into a more integrated hardware and software ecosystem with a new focus on design and user experience. By the time the rivalry heated up, Apple had already begun to carefully position itself for success. Strategic preparation and positioning. 1. Apple's focus on innovation and design. Apple knew that in order to outcompete Microsoft, it needed to differentiate itself. Instead of engaging in direct competition with Windows PCs, Apple invested in creating revolutionary new products with unique features. This was the foundation for the iPod, iPhone, and iPad. Apple's design philosophy: creating products that were user-friendly, aesthetically pleasing, and integrated with a smooth software experience, was part of its strategy to make itself unbeatable in the consumer electronics and mobile markets. Example: the release of the iPod 2001 and the iTunes Store 2003 didn't just enter the music market, it revolutionized it by offering a better user experience than existing MP3 players. Apple made sure it was well prepared to dominate a growing market, capturing consumer attention long before competitors had a chance to react. 2. Building the ecosystem and lock-in effect. Apple strategically positioned its ecosystem of hardware, software, and services in a way that made it very difficult for users to switch to competitors like Microsoft. By integrating the iPhone, iPad, iTunes, and the App Store, Apple created an interconnected ecosystem that encouraged consumers to stay within its world. This strategy ensured that Apple wasn't just competing with Microsoft on individual products, but was preparing to outlast them with a superior, seamless experience. Example, when Microsoft launched its Windows Phone, it entered the mobile market and tried to compete with Apple's iPhone, but Apple had already established a loyal customer base that was deeply integrated into its ecosystem, making it very difficult for Microsoft to lure users away. Number 3, focusing on the premium market. Apple understood that it couldn't win the same battle as Microsoft by focusing on cheap, low margin products. Instead, it focused on creating high quality, like premium products that consumers would be willing to pay a premium for. This differentiation allowed Apple to target a different demographic, one that valued aesthetics, ease of use, and status. Example, Apple's pricing strategy for the iPhone positioned it as a luxury product. While competitors like Samsung and other Android manufacturers competed on price, Apple created a sense of exclusivity, ensuring that their products were seen as more valuable, both in terms of features and brand prestige. Execution of strategy. 1. Timing the launch of key products. Apple's success wasn't just about having the best product, it was about knowing when to introduce innovations that would capture market interest. The launch of the iPhone 2007 is a prime example. At the time, smartphones were mostly clunky and difficult to use, dominated by companies like BlackBerry and Nokia. Apple, however, ensured that its phone was both innovative with a touch interface, internet browsing, and apps, and beautifully designed. 2. Seizing opportunities in the mobile and tablet markets. While Microsoft was focusing on improving its Windows OS, Apple was preparing for the next wave of computing, mobility. With the iPad 2010, Apple set a new standard for portable computing that would eventually shift the entire industry towards tablets and away from traditional PCs, areas where Microsoft had been dominant. Number 3, responding to Microsoft's weaknesses. Microsoft's response to Apple's innovations was reactive rather than proactive. While Apple anticipated the rise of mobile computing, Microsoft was slow to adapt. The Zune, Microsoft's answer to the iPod, was a failure, and its Windows Phone didn't have the same appeal as the iPhone. Apple had already gained a massive lead in both the phone and tablet markets by the time Microsoft's products launched, making it difficult for Microsoft to catch up. Key takeaway: Apple's success in competing with Microsoft can be seen as a reflection of Sun Tzu's principle of ensuring victory before the battle begins. By preparing strategically, focusing on innovation, creating a loyal customer base, and differentiating itself with a premium product, Apple essentially made itself unbeatable before Microsoft could mount a serious challenge. By the time Microsoft tried to catch up, Apple had already established strong footholds in the key markets of smartphones, tablets, and digital media, leaving Microsoft to play catch up. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes that victory is achieved by first ensuring you cannot be defeated, and then waiting for the enemy to make a mistake. Defense is about protecting yourself, while attacking is about seizing the right moment to strike. The best generals win through perfect strategy, often without anyone knowing how. A good general prepares for victory before the battle even begins, following clear principles and maintaining discipline. Successful military strategy relies on 5 elements: measurement, estimation, calculation, balancing of chances, and victory. A victorious army is far stronger than a defeated one, much like a pound outweighs a grain. The momentum of battle. Sun Tzu said, managing a large army is no different from managing a small one. The key lies in organizing them into clear units. Similarly, leading a large force into battle is like commanding a small one. Clear signals and proper coordination are essential. The ability to make an army withstand any enemy without defeat comes from skillfully combining ordinary and extraordinary tactics. When an attack is well targeted, it becomes as devastating as throwing a heavy stone at an egg, unstoppable and effective. In war, ordinary methods confront the enemy, but extraordinary methods secure victory. Those who excel at using extraordinary tactics can create endless possibilities, just as nature offers infinite variety. The cycles of the sun and moon and the changing of seasons show how things begin anew after they end. There are only 5 basic musical notes, yet they produce infinite melodies. There are only five primary colors, yet they form countless shades. There are only five basic tastes, yet their combinations are limitless. Similarly, in battle, there are only ordinary and extraordinary strategies, yet their variations and transformations are endless. The interplay between ordinary and extraordinary methods is like an endless cycle. Who can fully grasp its depths? The momentum of rushing water is powerful enough to move stones, and the speed of a hunting bird is sharp enough to strike its prey. This illustrates the importance of both momentum and precision. A skilled warrior builds momentum to create an unstoppable force and applies precision for decisive action. Momentum is like pulling a drawn bow. Precision is like releasing its arrow. Even in the chaos of battle, a well-trained army remains unshaken. It may appear disordered, yet it is strong and resilient. Chaos can arise from order, fear can arise from courage, and weakness can arise from strength. Order and chaos depend on preparation, courage and fear depend on the circumstances, and strength and weakness depend on positioning. A skilled commander shapes the actions of the enemy. By offering tempting opportunities, the enemy will pursue them. By creating apparent threats, the enemy will respond. Use benefits to lure the enemy and maintain a solid position to confront them. A true master of war focuses on leveraging momentum, not individual effort. By harnessing momentum, they can make their forces move as naturally as rolling stones down a hill. Stones at rest remain still, but on a slope they roll and gather speed. Similarly, an army led by a skilled commander moves with unstoppable force, like a stone rolling down a steep mountain. 1. The Battle of Xiangyu and Liu Bang. Background of the battle. The Chu-Han contention was a civil war following the collapse of the Qin dynasty, where two main contenders, Zhang Liu Bang, fought for control over China. Xiang Yu was a brilliant military leader, known for his strength and battle experience. But Liu Bang, the leader of the Han forces, was renowned for his ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances and for his strategic foresight. Xiang Yu's defeat strategy. Han Xin, a general under Liu Bang, played a key role in this victory by leveraging mobility and speed. The reasons for Xiang Yu's defeat are as follows. 1. Ambush and deception. Liu Bang capitalized on intelligence that Xiang Yu's forces were concentrated in a particular region and moved swiftly to attack Xiang Yu's rear. Liu Bang's army launched a surprise attack, splitting Xiang Yu's forces and causing confusion. 2. Tactical flexibility. Liu Bang demonstrated flexibility by adapting his tactics in response to changing battlefield conditions. He was able to recognize when his forces were at a disadvantage and employed varied strategies to turn the tide in his favor. Adaptability. Liu Bang was known for his ability to quickly change strategies based on the battlefield situation. He seized the opportunity when Xiang Yu's forces were scattered, executing a decisive maneuver to defeat them. Outcome of the battle. In this final showdown, Xiang Yu was completely defeated by Liu Bang's forces. His army disintegrated, and Xiang Yu eventually took his own life. Liu Bang went on to unite China and establish the Han dynasty, becoming Emperor Gaozu of Han. Lessons from the battle. The battle exemplifies the importance of strategic agility and improvisation. While Xiang Yu was a formidable general, Liu Bang's quick thinking and ability to adapt to the ever-changing battlefield environment allowed him to achieve victory. Liu Bang's improvised decision-making during critical moments of the battle showed the power of flexibility in warfare. 2. Battle of Kik 16 BC. The Battle of Cannae took place in 216 BC during the Second Punic War between Hannibal Barca and the Roman Republic. This battle is one of the most famous examples of military genius and strategic victory in history. In this battle, Hannibal decisively defeated the Roman army, delivering the most significant defeat in Roman history. Background of the battle. Hannibal crossed the Alps into Italy in 218 BC, posing a serious threat to Rome. Over the next few years, he engaged the Roman army several times, achieving significant victories. Rome responded by sending a large army to defeat him, but Hannibal's quick and agile maneuvers allowed him to defeat the Roman forces repeatedly. Battle strategy. Hannibal's strategy is a prime example of his tactical flexibility and adaptability. He was able to predict Roman intentions and adjust his tactics accordingly. The key strategies were as follows. 1. Luring the enemy. Hannibal tricked the Romans into attacking by using deceptive tactics, making them believe they could easily defeat him. Once the Romans committed to a frontal attack, he led them into a trap. 2. Encirclement. Hannibal arranged his forces in a concave formation, drawing the Roman army in. As the Romans pushed forward, his forces tightened the circle, ultimately surrounding them on all sides. 3. Psychological warfare. Hannibal exploited the Roman confidence, knowing that they underestimated him. This overconfidence led the Roman generals to underestimate his military genius, which he turned to his advantage. Outcome of the battle. Hannibal's forces completely encircled the Roman army, resulting in the death or capture of over 50,000 out of 80,000 Roman soldiers. It was a devastating defeat for Rome and solidified Hannibal's reputation as one of the greatest military tacticians in history. Lessons from the battle. The Battle of Cannae teaches that strategic agility and tactical flexibility are often more important than raw military strength. Hannibal's ability to anticipate the enemy's actions and exploit their weaknesses was key to his success. His constant adaptation during the battle, adjusting his tactics in real time, showcases his mastery of improvisation on the battlefield. 3. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu teaches that success in battle comes from organizing forces, combining ordinary and extraordinary tactics, and adapting to changing situations. Momentum and improvisation are key as a skilled commander shapes the enemy's actions and uses momentum to create unstoppable force, ensuring victory. Chapter 6. Strength and Weakness. Sun Tzu said, "Those who arrive early on the battlefield and wait for their enemy remain rested, while those who arrive late and rush into battle are exhausted. Therefore, skilled warriors lead their enemies to action but are not led by them. To make the enemy come to you, present them with advantages. To prevent them from approaching, create obstacles. Exhaust an enemy that is well rested, starve them when they are well fed, and disrupt their comfort when they are at ease. Strike where they do not anticipate, and move where they least expect." Traveling vast distances without fatigue is possible by avoiding densely occupied areas. Success in attack comes from targeting unguarded positions. Success in defense comes from holding ground the enemy does not attack. Skilled attackers make it impossible for their enemies to predict their targets, and skilled defenders make their positions unfathomable. Their movements are subtle and invisible, their actions quiet and imperceptible, gaining complete control over the enemy's fate. Advance in a way that leaves no room for resistance. Strike where the enemy is weak. Retreat in a way that cannot be pursued. Move swiftly and out of reach. If I want to fight, even a well-fortified enemy cannot avoid battle because I will target what they must protect. If I do not wish to fight, even a weak defensive position will prevent the enemy from engaging because I will disrupt their plans. By revealing their form while concealing my own, I remain focused while the enemy is divided. My forces are unified, while the enemy is split into 10 groups. This allows me to concentrate 10 against 1, ensuring my strength outmatches theirs. Victory comes from overwhelming the few with the many. If my battlefield remains unknown, the enemy must prepare for everything, which spreads their forces thin and weakens their positions. When the enemy prepares for the front, their rear is left vulnerable. If they prepare for the rear, the front becomes weak. Focusing on one side leaves another exposed. A well-prepared force is everywhere weak. Those who scatter their forces to cover all possibilities become few in strength, while those who force the enemy to spread out remain strong. Knowing where and when to fight allows armies to converge even from 1,000 miles away. Without such knowledge, even nearby forces cannot support each other. If the distance is a mere few miles or dozens, their inability to aid one another renders them powerless. Therefore, even if the enemy is numerous, their numbers offer no advantage if they are poorly coordinated. Victory depends not on size but on unity. Strategic calculations reveal opportunities for success. Understanding the dynamics of motion and stillness allows you to anticipate the enemy's actions. Analyzing the battlefield's shape reveals the terrain for life or death. Comparing strengths and weaknesses identifies areas of surplus and deficiency. The ultimate form of strategy lies in formlessness. When your plans are invisible, even the wisest cannot predict them, and the cleverest cannot counter them. Though others may see the methods of my victories, they cannot comprehend the strategy behind them. My victories are unique and ever adaptable, responding to endless variations in the battlefield. The nature of warfare resembles water. Just as water flows away from heights and seeks the lowest ground, an army avoids strength and strikes at weakness. Water adapts to the terrain, and so must an army adapt to its enemy. Therefore, there is no fixed strategy in warfare. Just as the seasons change, the length of the days varies, and the moon goes through phases of waxing and waning. 1. The Battle of Hansando, 1592. Exploiting the enemy's weaknesses. During the Battle of Hansando, Admiral Yi carefully analyzed and exploited the weaknesses of the Japanese fleet despite their numerical superiority. Overconfidence of the enemy. The Japanese Navy, led by Toyotomi Hideyoshi's forces, was overconfident in its strength. They believed that their superior numbers and heavy warships would easily overwhelm the Korean fleet. This overconfidence allowed Yi to deceive and lead them into unfavorable positions. Vulnerability of large ships. The Japanese fleet relied on large, heavy ships that were not as maneuverable as the smaller, faster Korean ships. Yi's forces, which included the iconic turtle ships, Geobuxion, had the advantage of speed and maneuverability, especially in narrow waters. This allowed them to outmaneuver the larger, slower Japanese ships. Admiral Yi understood that the Japanese fleet was most vulnerable in its overconfidence and its reliance on larger, slower ships. By exploiting these weaknesses, he set the stage for his victory. Using deception and staying unpredictable. Yi Sun Sin's use of deception and unpredictability was a key element of his strategy during the Battle of Hansando. Luring the enemy into a trap, Yi's forces initially retreated and appeared to be fleeing, which lulled the Japanese fleet into a sense of superiority. The Japanese pursued, believing they had cornered the Koreans. However, Yi had planned this retreat as a way to lure the Japanese into a position where they would be vulnerable to attack. Ambush. Once the Japanese fleet entered the narrow waters near Hansen Island, Yi's fleet launched a surprise counterattack, ambushing the Japanese in a position where their large ships could not maneuver effectively. This was in line with Sun Tzu's principle of striking where the enemy does not expect. The unpredictability of Yi's movements and his ability to deceive the Japanese fleet into thinking they were victorious until the right moment for a counterattack was a key factor in his success. 3. Adapting to the situation. One of Sun Tzu's key principles is the ability to adapt to the changing dynamics of the battlefield. Yi Sun Sin demonstrated exceptional adaptability during the battle, using terrain to advantage. Um, the battle took place near the narrow waters of Hansan Island. The Japanese fleet, with its large ships, was at a disadvantage in such tight spaces, while Yi's smaller, more maneuverable ships could easily outflank them. Yi adapted to the terrain, using it to his advantage by drawing the Japanese fleet into a position where they could not escape. Effective use of turtle ships. The turtle ships, which were heavily armored and equipped with cannons, were a perfect match for the conditions of the battle. They allowed Yi's forces to attack the Japanese fleet at close range, effectively neutralizing the Japanese superiority in numbers. Yi's ability to assess and adapt to the changing conditions of the battlefield, particularly the narrow waters and the Japanese fleet's reliance on large ships, played a crucial role in the outcome of the battle. 4. Defeating a larger force with a smaller one. Despite being outnumbered, Yi Sun Sin's forces achieved a decisive victory by exploiting the weaknesses of the larger Japanese fleet. The Japanese were expecting a quick victory, but Yi's tactical brilliance and ability to turn the situation to his advantage led to a crushing defeat for the Japanese. Overcoming numerical superiority. The Japanese fleet had roughly 130 ships, while Yi's fleet numbered about 50. However, through the effective use of smaller, more agile ships, and by outmaneuvering and ambushing the Japanese, Yi was able to decisively defeat a fleet that was more than twice the size of his own. Tactical innovation. Yi's use of the crane wing formation, a tactic that surrounds and isolates enemy ships, and the turtle ships. Close-range cannon fire was innovative and made it nearly impossible for the Japanese to effectively respond. Yi's victory at Hansando was a clear example of how a smaller force could overcome a much larger one by exploiting weaknesses, using deception, and adapting to the situation. Conclusion: the Battle of Hansando exemplifies the core principles of the art of war, particularly the concepts of exploiting the enemy's weaknesses, staying unpredictable, and adapting to the circumstances. By using deceptive tactics, taking advantage of terrain, and maintaining flexibility in his strategy, Admiral Yi Sun-sin was able to defeat a numerically superior enemy. This battle demonstrates how intelligence, adaptability, and superior strategy can allow a smaller force to achieve victory over a larger, more powerful one. In this way, Yi Sun-sin's victory is a timeless example of Sun Tzu's teachings applied in real-life warfare. 2. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu teaches that success in battle comes from exploiting the enemy's weaknesses and hiding your own strengths. By staying unpredictable, using deception, and adapting to the situation, a smaller force can overcome a larger one. Note: if you find the original text too long and convoluted, it is sufficient to focus on actual examples and summaries. The current version of The Art of War is often intertwined with commentary, making it difficult to separate the two. For instance, this chapter includes a discussion of the five elements, Wu Xing, but the concept of their mutual generation, the cycle of creation, did not appear until centuries after Sun Tzu's death. While there may be some debate about the timing of the introduction of this concept, it is clear that the original text of The Art of War lacks consistency in some parts. 7. Strategy and maneuver. Sun Tzu said, "The general receives orders from the ruler, gathers the troops, and establishes camps. The most difficult aspect of military strategy is military engagement. The difficulty of military engagement lies in turning detours into straight paths and turning disadvantages into advantages. Thus, by taking detours, one can lure the enemy into a favorable position where the later forces move, but the earlier forces arrive first. This is the strategy of using detours effectively. Military engagement is both advantageous and risky. If the army moves in pursuit of profit, it may not reach its objective in time. If it fails to do so, the supply wagons will be lost. Therefore, one must advance rapidly, without delay, both day and night, doubling the pace, moving 100 miles to seize the advantage, capturing the commanders of the enemy forces, with the strong advancing first and the exhausted following behind. The process involves 11 steps for 100 miles. If the advantage is pursued after 50 miles, the generals will be weakened, requiring half the time. If pursued after 30 miles, 2/3 of the time is required. Therefore, without supply wagons, the army perishes. Without food, the army perishes. Without accumulated provisions, the army perishes. Thus, one who does not understand the strategies of neighboring rulers cannot anticipate alliances. One who does not know the terrain, the mountains, forests, and marshes cannot conduct military operations, and one who does not use local guides cannot secure advantageous positions. Thus, military action is based on deception, moving according to advantage, and using division and combination as the basis of change. Its speed is like the wind, its slowness like the forest, its invasions like fire, its stillness like a mountain, its difficulty to detect like shadows, and its movement like thunder. To attack the enemy's village, divide the forces, expand the terrain, and seize the advantage is to command wisely. Those who understand the strategy of detours and direct routes will prevail. This is the principle of military engagement. The military organization says, when words cannot be heard, use drums and gongs. When sight cannot be shared, use banners and flags. The use of drums, gongs, banners, and flags is to focus the attention of the soldiers. When the soldiers are unified in focus, the brave cannot act alone, and the cowardly cannot retreat alone. This is the law of using massed forces. Therefore, in night battles, drums and gongs are used more, and in daylight battles, banners and flags are used more as they alter the perception of the troops. The energy of the army can be depleted, and the heart of the general can be lost. Morning energy is sharp, midday energy is sluggish, and evening energy returns. Therefore, A skilled commander avoids the sharpness of the enemy's morning energy and strikes when they are sluggish in the evening. This is the management of energy. To prepare for chaos with order, to wait for noise with silence, is the management of the heart. To wait for the distant with the near, to wait for rest with fatigue, and to wait for satiety with hunger is the management of strength. Never engage with a flag that is upright or an army in formation. This is the management of change. Thus, the method of using military force is: do not approach a high ridge, do not attack an army from behind a hill, do not follow the enemy when they pretend to retreat north, do not engage a sharp vanguard, do not tempt soldiers with rewards, do not block the retreating army, and when surrounding the enemy, leave an opening. Never pursue a defeated enemy relentlessly. This is the method of military strategy. Hannibal's crossing of the Alps, 208 BC. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal, the Carthaginian general, used a remarkable strategy to surprise the Roman army. One of the most significant aspects of his campaign was his crossing of the Alps, which was an unexpected move that caught the Romans off guard. This strategy aligns with Sun Tzu's concept of detour, as Hannibal took a path that was not only difficult but completely unpredictable. Background and execution. 1. Unconventional route. One of the key points in Hannibal's strategy was his choice to avoid the traditional routes that the Romans anticipated. Instead of advancing through the Mediterranean coast or taking a relatively safer path, Hannibal decided to march his army through the treacherous Alpine mountain range. This was a highly risky move, as crossing the Alps was considered nearly impossible for a large army at the time. However, by doing so, he disrupted Roman expectations and made a bold tactical decision, much like the detour strategy described by Sun Tzu. 2. Crossing the Alps. Hannibal's decision to march through the Alps was an audacious one, as it defied the normal military logic of the time. This route was harsh, filled with snowstorms and dangerous terrain. But by taking this route, Hannibal was able to bypass Roman defenses that were concentrated in areas the Romans expected him to travel through. His surprise movement forced the Romans to reevaluate their positions and respond to an unexpected threat from an entirely different direction. Number 3, outwitting the Romans. The Romans had anticipated that Hannibal would advance along the coast, where they had prepared their defenses. Instead, Hannibal's detour through the Alps allowed him to bypass their defenses entirely, leaving the Romans unprepared for his sudden appearance in northern Italy. The Roman army was caught off guard, unable to stop his forces from gaining the upper hand in the early engagements. Results and impact. 1. Successful surprise attack. Hannibal's crossing of the Alps was a shock to the Romans. After reaching northern Italy, he quickly reassembled his forces and prepared to launch attacks on Roman positions. Because the Romans had not anticipated his arrival, they were unable to deploy their forces in time, giving Hannibal an early advantage in several key battles. Number 2, losses and strategic gains. The journey over the Alps was extremely costly for Hannibal's army. They suffered significant casualties from the harsh conditions. However, despite these losses, Hannibal's strategic advantage outweighed the costs. The Romans, caught off guard by his unexpected route, had no time to react or counter his moves effectively. This allowed Hannibal to continue his campaign and pressure Roman defenses. Number 3, tactical superiority. After crossing the Alps, Hannibal was able to predict Roman movements and attack from advantageous positions. He used Sun Tzu's principles of detours and sudden strikes to great effect, as his unexpected route put him in favorable positions to exploit Roman weaknesses. His surprise maneuvers forced the Romans into a reactive state, and Hannibal capitalized on this to gain tactical superiority. Application of Sun Tzu's strategy. Sun Tzu's concept of detour is clearly reflected in Hannibal's tactics. By avoiding the direct path and choosing a much more difficult, unexpected route, Hannibal successfully avoided Roman predictions and seized the initiative. His ability to adapt to difficult conditions and make decisions that confused and overwhelmed the Roman forces mirrors Sun Tzu's philosophy of using detours and unpredictability to gain an advantage. Conclusion: Hannibal's crossing of the Alps is an excellent example of strategic maneuverability and flexibility in warfare. This audacious move demonstrated the importance of not sticking to conventional paths and instead utilizing surprise to gain the upper hand, as outlined in Sun Tzu's teachings. It was a tactical masterstroke that allowed Hannibal to gain significant momentum in his war against Rome, showing the power of unpredictable maneuvers and the value of detour strategies in military conflict. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of flexibility and maneuverability in military strategy. Effective use of detours, deception, and swift movements can lead to victory, as they allow the army to exploit advantageous positions and surprise the enemy. Military action should be adaptable, with speed, unpredictability, and strategic use of resources, such as the manipulation of energy, morale, and timing, being key to success. Proper preparation, understanding terrain, and using communication tools like flags and drums help to manage forces efficiently. Additionally, strategic restraint, such as leaving openings when surrounding the enemy and avoiding relentless pursuit, ensures a more successful military campaign. Variation of tactics. Sun Tzu said, "In the art of warfare, a general receives orders from the ruler, assembles the troops, and mobilizes the army. In practice, in dispersive ground, chitti do not encamp. In intersecting ground, chitti make alliances. In isolated ground, do not linger. In enclosed ground, waiti devise strategies. In desperate ground, siti engage in battle. There are paths that should not be taken, enemies that should not be attacked, fortresses that should not be besieged, terrain that should not be contested, and orders from the ruler that should not be obeyed. A commander who understands the benefits of the nine variations will be adept at employing troops. Conversely, one who does not comprehend these variations, even if knowledgeable about terrain, will fail to utilize its advantages. Similarly, one who organizes troops without mastering the techniques of the nine variations will, despite knowing the benefits of geography, be unable to make full use of his soldiers. Therefore, a wise leader considers both advantages and disadvantages. By recognizing benefits, he ensures trustworthiness in his plans. By anticipating harm, he devises ways to neutralize potential threats. To subdue rival rulers, use harm. To compel them to act, assign tasks. To entice them, offer benefits. In the conduct of warfare, do not rely on the enemy's failure to come, but prepare for it by ensuring you are ready to meet him. Do not rely on the enemy's failure to attack, but secure positions that make you unassailable. The 5 dangers of a general. There are 5 critical flaws that a commander must avoid. 1. Recklessness. Leads to destruction because it invites death. 2. Excessive desire to live, Bisen, results in capture because it prioritizes survival. 3. Impulsive anger. Makes a general vulnerable to insults and manipulation. 4. Excessive integrity, Ninjit, leaves one open to disgrace. 5. Over-solicitude for the troops. Causes overburdening and exhaustion. These 5 dangers represent the general's failings and the calamities of warfare. To overturn armies and cause the death of generals, these 5 flaws are often at fault. They must be thoroughly examined and avoided. 1. Napoleon's Italian campaign, 1796 to 1797. Detailed explanation. Napoleon Bonaparte demonstrated his military genius during the Italian campaign, where he led the French Revolutionary Army to victory against Austrian and Sardinian Piedmontese forces. Despite being outnumbered and facing limited resources, Napoleon adapted his tactics to the terrain and the situation, showcasing his flexibility and strategic brilliance. 1. Mountain terrain and mobility warfare. Northern Italy was characterized by the Alps and rugged terrain, making large-scale troop movements difficult and slow. Napoleon divided his forces into smaller units and moved quickly through the mountainous regions, often outflanking the enemy or creating diversions. He targeted key intersections and high ground to block supply lines and disrupt the enemy's logistics, which drained the enemy's resources and morale. 2. Plains and concentrated attacks. In areas with flatter terrain, like the Po River Basin, Napoleon concentrated his forces for powerful attacks against the enemy. A notable example is the Battle of Lodi, May 1796, where Napoleon concentrated his forces around the bridges over the Po River, defeating the Austrian forces and forcing them to retreat. He focused on attacking the enemy's main divisions while isolating their reinforcements, leading to a decisive victory. 3. Surprise and unconventional routes. Napoleon was known for choosing unexpected routes, which allowed him to strike when the enemy least expected it. In the Battle of Montenat, April 1796, he divided his forces to create confusion and prevent the Austrian and Sardinian Piedmontese forces from coordinating. He often used maneuver warfare to bypass enemy strongholds and attack their weak points, breaking the enemy's defensive posture. 4. Psychological warfare and diplomacy. Along with military maneuvers, Napoleon used psychological warfare and diplomacy effectively. He delivered swift and overwhelming attacks that shattered enemy morale. By offering favorable surrender terms to certain commanders, he caused internal divisions and defections within the enemy forces. He diplomatically negotiated an early surrender with the Sardinian Piedmontese kingdom, simplifying his strategic focus on Austria. Outcome. The Italian campaign stands as a prime example of Napoleon's strategic flexibility and leadership. He used terrain to his advantage, adjusted tactics based on the situation, and outmaneuvered a superior enemy force. Despite facing logistical challenges and limited resources, Napoleon achieved success after success, laying the foundation for his rise to power. The campaign boosted the morale of the French Revolutionary Army and allowed Napoleon to secure the Treaty of Campo Formio, 1797, which expanded France's influence over northern Italy and significantly weakened Austrian control in the region. Key insights and summary. The variation of tactics emphasizes the importance of adapting strategies to suit the 9 types of terrain and changing circumstances. Commanders must balance potential advantages with risks, recognize when to engage or retreat, and understand when to disobey orders for the greater good. Success hinges on mastering these variations and avoiding 5 critical flaws in leadership: recklessness, overcaution, impulsiveness, excessive integrity, and overconcern for troops, which can result in disaster if left unchecked. Chapter 9: Strategic Movement and Positioning. Sun Tzu said, when positioning the army against the enemy, avoid areas where mountains are cut off by valleys and ensure the area is elevated for better visibility. Avoid placing the army in locations that are difficult to ascend, as this would be a disadvantage in mountainous terrain. When crossing water, ensure a sufficient distance from the river. Do not meet the enemy while they are in the water. Instead, wait for them to cross halfway and then strike. If you want to engage in battle, avoid positioning yourself near water when confronting the enemy. Choose high ground for an advantage and avoid meeting the enemy in flowing water. This is the strategy for armies near water. When dealing with marshes and swamps, move swiftly and do not linger. If 2 armies meet in a swamp, ensure you stay near water grasses and face away from dense trees. This is the method for armies in marshy areas. In flatlands, it is easier to maneuver, but you should make sure that the enemy's back is to higher ground with the front of your army facing danger. This is how armies should move in flatlands. These 4 strategies were the reason the Yellow Emperor was able to defeat the 4 emperors. Armies generally prefer high ground and avoid low ground. They value sunny areas and avoid shaded ones. Armies thrive in healthy environments and maintain strong positions with no lasting weaknesses. This is how victory is assured. When positioned on hills or levees, make sure to be in the sunny area and have your back to higher ground. This is the advantage of terrain and the support of the environment. When it rains and the water rises, if you wish to cross, wait until the water has settled. When encountering areas with deep ravines or traps, such as the heavenly pit, heavenly prison, heavenly net, heavenly trap, or heavenly crevice, leave immediately and avoid these places. If I avoid these, the enemy will approach. If I approach, the enemy will retreat. When near dangerous terrain, such as swamps, muddy wells, reeds, forests, or dense growth, be cautious, as these are places where enemies might lie in ambush. When the enemy is close and quiet, they rely on their position's strength. If they challenge from a distance, it is to lure the enemy in. The place they occupy may be advantageous. If many trees are moving, the enemy is approaching. If dense grass obstructs the view, there is suspicion. If birds take flight, it signals an ambush. If animals are startled, it signifies an impending threat. If dust rises sharply, it means vehicles are approaching. If the ground is low and wide, it's likely foot soldiers. If paths are scattered and clear, it may be woodcutters. If only a few are moving, they are likely soldiers. If there is a humble tone but more precautions are being taken, they are advancing. If the tone is strong but the forces are retreating, it signals withdrawal. If light vehicles are ahead and to the side, it indicates formation. If there is no agreement but a request for peace, it's a plot. If the army is scattered and arranged, it means a planned confrontation. If the movement is half advancing and half retreating, it's a trap. If soldiers lean on staffs and stand, it indicates hunger. If they fetch water first and drink, it signals thirst. If they see an opportunity but do not advance, it means exhaustion. If birds gather, it suggests a weak point. If there are calls at night, it indicates fear. If the army is disturbed, it shows the general has lost control. If flags are moving, it indicates confusion. If officers are angry, the troops are fatigued. If grain, horses, and meat are running out and the army refuses to return to base, it shows the enemy is desperate. If the soldiers whisper among themselves, morale has been lost. If rewards are frequent, it signals desperation. If punishments are frequent, it indicates weariness. If the general is harsh and then fears the troops, it shows a lack of discipline. If those seeking rest are apologizing, it shows they need recovery. When the army faces the enemy with anger but does not engage or retreat, careful observation is required. Thus, the size of the army is not as important as its strategy. The key is to avoid reckless advances, focusing on overwhelming the enemy and capturing their forces. Only when there is no concern and the enemy is easily dealt with can victory be achieved. If a soldier has not yet aligned with your cause and is punished, they will not obey. If they are punished after already aligning, they will not respect the order. Therefore, unifying the army through proper rewards and discipline is crucial for victory. When the general maintains integrity and consistently leads the people, they will follow. However, if the general lacks consistency in leadership, the people will not follow. When the leader acts with integrity, they will be in harmony with troops. 1. Battle of Gaugamela, 331 BCE, Alexander the Great versus Darius III. The Battle of Gaugamela is one of the most famous strategic victories of Alexander the Great, where strategic movement and positioning played a key role. In this battle, Alexander faced the much larger Persian army led by Darius III, which numbered over 100,000, while Alexander's forces totaled about 40,000. Despite the size disparity, Alexander's superior strategy and tactics secured a decisive victory. Number 1. Utilizing higher ground for positioning. Alexander positioned his army on higher ground, which provided several advantages. This tactic made it easier to defend against enemy advances and gave his troops better visibility over the battlefield. Being on elevated terrain allowed Alexander's forces to effectively observe enemy movements and respond accordingly. In contrast, Darius chose to fight on a vast, flat plain, which gave Alexander a significant advantage in positioning. Number 2. Use of cavalry and chariots. The Persian army had a powerful cavalry and chariot force, which they relied on as the main force for attack. However, Alexander countered this by deploying his light cavalry and infantry in a highly mobile way. Specifically, Alexander used his cavalry to lure and neutralize the Persian chariot units, weakening their impact on the battle. This allowed Alexander's forces to maintain the initiative and prevent Darius's cavalry from overwhelming his troops. 3. Central breach and lure tactics. One of Alexander's key tactics was to create a weak spot in his center to lure the Persian forces into attacking. Darius focused his efforts on the center of Alexander's army, believing it to be the weakest point. As Darius's army pressed the attack in the center, Alexander executed a brilliant move by sending his cavalry around the Persian flanks, causing Darius's forces to be attacked from both sides. This split the Persian army and led to a decisive breakthrough. Number 4. Breaking the enemy's morale. As the battle unfolded, Darius's forces started to lose momentum and their morale collapsed. The Persian chariots and cavalry were overwhelmed by the superior mobility and tactics of Alexander's army. As a result, Darius panicked and fled the battlefield. Once their leader retreated, the Persian army disintegrated and Alexander's forces secured victory. 5. Effective use of terrain. Throughout the battle, Alexander skillfully used the terrain to his advantage. He positioned his troops in areas that allowed him to control key routes and block enemy advances. He also used natural barriers such as rivers and hills to defend his forces while maintaining the ability to outmaneuver the larger Persian army. This use of terrain, combined with his strategic deployment, allowed Alexander to maintain the upper hand. Conclusion. The Battle of Gaugamela exemplifies how strategic movement and positioning can overcome significant numerical disadvantage. Alexander's success was not just due to the strength of his army, but his ability to adapt to the terrain, control the battlefield, and exploit weaknesses in the Persian forces. This victory is a textbook example of how strategic positioning and flexibility can lead to overwhelming success in warfare. Number 2. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of strategic positioning based on terrain, such as preferring high ground, avoiding dangerous areas like swamps or ravines, and making use of natural features to gain an advantage. He advises against reckless movements and stresses the value of discipline, proper leadership, and unity within the army. Success is achieved through careful observation of the enemy's movements, maintaining control over the army's morale, and making informed strategic decisions based on the environment and the situation at hand. Terrain. Sun Tzu said, "The terrain can be divided into 6 types: accessible, difficult, advantageous, narrow, dangerous, and distant." 1. Accessible terrain allows both us to advance and the enemy to come, meaning it is favorable for movement. 2. Difficult terrain allows us to advance, but it is hard to retreat. In such terrain, if the enemy is unprepared, we can strike and win. If the enemy is ready, it becomes hard for us to succeed and escape, which is unfavorable. 3. Advantageous terrain benefits both us and the enemy, but we have no way to retreat. In such cases, we should draw the enemy out and strike when they are half committed, which is to our advantage. 4. Narrow terrain is a situation where we take the lead and occupy the space, waiting for the enemy. If the enemy takes it first, we should either avoid engaging if they fully occupy it or fight if they do not. 5. Dangerous terrain requires us to take the high ground to wait for the enemy. If the enemy occupies it first, we should pull back and avoid fighting. 6. Distant terrain refers to a situation where forces are evenly matched, making it difficult to provoke the enemy, and a battle is not advantageous. These 6 types of terrain are vital considerations in warfare. A general must be keenly aware of them. On the characteristics of troops, there are 6 types of troop movements: swift, slow, trapped, broken, disordered, and disheartened. These are not caused by divine forces, but by the general's mistakes. 1. Swift refers to when one force strikes with overwhelming speed, like a force striking 10 enemies with a single blow. 2. Slow occurs when the officers are strong, but the soldiers are weak. 3. Trapped occurs when the officers are weak and the soldiers are strong. 4. Broken refers to a situation where the officers are angry and do not follow orders, or when the enemy causes confusion and disarray within the ranks. 5. Disordered occurs when a general is weak, unclear in command, and when soldiers lack consistency or discipline, causing chaos. 6. Disheartened happens when a general miscalculates, using fewer forces against a stronger enemy, leading to poor strategy. These 6 conditions can lead to defeat. The general must be aware of them to prevent failure. The role of terrain. Terrain is a vital ally in battle. Understanding the enemy's situation, preparing for obstacles, and knowing the natural advantages of the ground are key strategies for a commander. Those who understand these elements are guaranteed victory. Those who do not will fail. A general should avoid seeking fame in advance and should never shy away from necessary battles. Their main concern is the protection of the people and ensuring the nation's stability, which is the true treasure of a state. A general should treat their soldiers as one would treat their own children, guiding them with care and confidence. If a general cannot command with authority, or if soldiers are treated poorly, the results will be disastrous. If you know your own soldiers can strike, and you also know when the enemy can be struck, you have already secured half the victory. If you understand both your troops' strength and the enemy's vulnerability, but fail to understand the nature of the terrain, you are still only halfway to victory. Therefore, a general who understands strategy will never be confused and can always act with clarity. This is why it is said, know the enemy and know yourself, and victory will not be in doubt. Know the heavens and know the earth, and you can achieve complete victory. 1. Background of the battle. The Battle of Issus, 333 BC, was a significant encounter between Alexander the Great and Darius III of Persia. Alexander, after successfully winning the Battle of Granicus, continued his march into Persian territory. Darius, mustering a much larger army, confronted Alexander in the narrow coastal plains near Issus, modern-day Turkey. 2. Strategic use of terrain. The narrow terrain between the mountains and the sea played a crucial role in the battle. Alexander utilized the confined space to limit the effectiveness of Darius's larger forces. This terrain allowed Alexander to use his maneuverability to his advantage while Darius's forces were constrained by the lack of space. 3. Alexander's tactical approach. Alexander deployed his forces in a way that allowed him to strike at the heart of the Persian army. His cavalry was used to target Darius's flanks, while he led a direct assault in the center. The strategy focused on creating a breach in the middle, drawing Darius's forces in, and then attacking from multiple sides, which led to the collapse of the Persian front lines. Number 4. Darius's mistakes and flight. Darius made critical errors during the battle. He misjudged the terrain and failed to effectively organize his forces. As Alexander's forces broke through, Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his army in disarray. This retreat caused a collapse in Persian morale, and the Persian forces were quickly overwhelmed. Number 5. Outcome and aftermath. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander's superior tactics led to a decisive victory. The Persian forces were scattered, and Alexander's army gained significant spoils, including capturing important territories and treasures. This victory further cemented Alexander's reputation as an invincible leader and marked a critical point in his conquest of the Persian Empire. Number 6. Strategic lessons from the battle. The Battle of Issus highlighted Alexander's quick decision-making, ability to adapt to terrain, and his use of cavalry to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's formation. His skill in outmaneuvering a numerically superior force emphasized the importance of flexibility, speed, and precise tactics in achieving military success. Conclusion: the Battle of Issus remains a textbook example of how effective leadership, terrain knowledge, and tactical innovation can lead to victory, even against overwhelming odds. Alexander's victory shattered Persian confidence and marked a major step in his ongoing conquest of the Persian Empire. 2. The theory of terrain in the age of cold weapons and its limitations in modern warfare. Sun Tzu's insights on terrain are pivotal in understanding the role geography plays in warfare. His classification of terrain into 6 distinct types: accessible, difficult, advantageous, narrow, dangerous, and distant, offers timeless wisdom for military leaders. While these principles were formulated in the age of cold weapons such as swords, spears, and bows, their application continues to hold value, albeit with limitations in modern warfare, where technology and the nature of conflict have drastically evolved. 1. Accessible terrain. In Sun Tzu's time, accessible terrain was vital for enabling both the friendly forces and the enemy to maneuver freely. It allowed armies to advance quickly, facilitating swift, strategic movements. In modern warfare, however, while physical accessibility remains important, it is no longer the primary concern. The advent of mechanized and air forces means that the ability to traverse terrain can often be overcome by technology such as tanks, armored vehicles, and helicopters, which can move across a variety of terrains. However, the concept of accessible terrain still holds strategic significance. Urban warfare, for example, where space is constricted by infrastructure, presents challenges even to modern armies. Furthermore, the notion of accessible terrain extends to cyberspace and the electromagnetic spectrum in contemporary conflict. The accessibility of these domains to both state and non-state actors has transformed the battlefield, making non-physical terrain just as important as geographical terrain. Difficult terrain. Difficult terrain in the age of cold weapons referred to challenging grounds such as mountains, marshes, or thick forests that hindered retreat or repositioning. While modern warfare has mitigated some of these challenges through advanced mobility, such as armored vehicles, air transport, and satellite navigation, the terrain's difficulty still holds importance. Urban environments, jungles, or mountainous regions remain difficult to navigate for both sides, often resulting in protracted conflicts, as seen in Afghanistan or the Vietnam War. Moreover, in contemporary warfare, difficult terrain can become a tool for asymmetric warfare. Guerrilla fighters, who do not have the technological superiority of modern armies, can exploit the challenges of terrain to their advantage. Dense forests, caves, or rugged landscapes can neutralize the technological edge of advanced military forces, as evidenced in numerous insurgencies across the world. The limitations of difficult terrain have, therefore, remained a consistent factor in warfare, albeit with new complexities. Number three, advantageous terrain. Advantageous terrain is where both forces can operate effectively, but one must be cautious of the lack of retreat. Sun Tzu advised using such terrain to lure the enemy into a vulnerable position. In the age of cold weapons, advantageous terrain might refer to positions that offered high ground, control over natural choke points, or well-fortified defensive positions. In modern warfare, the concept of advantageous terrain has broadened. High-tech equipment like drones, surveillance satellites, and precision-guided munitions have rendered traditional advantages like high ground less critical. However, the principle still holds in urban warfare, where certain buildings or structures may provide a defensible position, as seen in the Battle of Stalingrad. In the cyber domain, advantageous terrain could be seen as control over key information systems, communications, or command and control networks, where advantage is gained by the superior control of critical assets. 4. Narrow terrain. Narrow terrain refers to positions where space is constrained, forcing both armies to engage in close quarter combat. Historically, narrow terrain such as mountain passes or narrow valleys made ambushes and surprise attacks effective. Modern warfare has evolved such that narrow terrain is less about geographic constraints and more about how forces are positioned and organized. In urban warfare, narrow terrain is still relevant. City streets, alleys, and buildings create confined spaces where maneuverability is limited. Modern urban combat, as seen in cities like Mosul or Aleppo, highlights the complexities of narrow terrain. In these environments, forces are forced to fight at close quarters, making it difficult for advanced weaponry to be as effective, and close coordination and infantry combat skills become crucial. Similarly, narrow terrain can also refer to cyber environments where digital space can become a bottleneck, such as in situations where data flows are blocked or restricted. Dangerous terrain. Dangerous terrain, as described by Sun Tzu, is where one's position becomes vulnerable if the enemy gains the higher ground or a more strategic position. Historically, this was about terrain that offered risks, such as steep cliffs or ridgelines, that left forces open to attack if they failed to hold or fortify the area. In modern times, dangerous terrain no longer refers solely to physical geography. Aerial and satellite dominance have made the high ground a relative term, with much of the danger in modern warfare emerging from threats in the air and cyber domains. In conventional warfare, being outflanked by air superiority or subjected to drone strikes can constitute a dangerous position, even if the physical terrain itself may seem advantageous. Thus, understanding the changing nature of high ground and the integration of cyber and electromagnetic warfare has become a key component of military strategy today. Sun Tzu's distant terrain was essentially a situation where armies could not easily engage because of vast distances or logistical constraints. Modern technology has largely mitigated the problem of distance. With advancements in long range artillery, airstrikes, and precision missiles, distance is less of a barrier. However, the concept still applies in terms of strategic positioning in global conflicts. Distant terrain also has relevance in modern naval and air operations. For instance, projecting military power across oceans or maintaining supply lines over vast distances, such as during the Cold War or in modern operations like those in the South China Sea, requires immense logistical capabilities. Furthermore, the idea of distant terrain can also apply to the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and long-range surveillance, where distant areas become increasingly accessible from a command center far removed from the front line. Conclusion: Sun Tzu's theory of terrain remains an invaluable guide for understanding the complexities of warfare, but its application must adapt to the realities of modern combat. While many of the physical terrain types he described are still relevant, especially in asymmetric and urban warfare, the limitations in modern warfare are significantly influenced by technological advances, including air superiority, cyber capabilities, and long range weapons. Ultimately, a general's ability to navigate both physical and technological terrain, understand the limitations of their forces, and adapt to rapidly changing conditions is crucial. Sun Tzu's wisdom continues to remind military leaders that success depends on a deep understanding of both the battlefield and the environment, combined with the ability to anticipate and outmaneuver the enemy. Understanding the terrain, whether geographic, digital, or otherwise, is just as vital now as it was in the age of cold weapons, but the methods of overcoming it have evolved to reflect the changes in technology and the nature of warfare. 3. Key insights and summary. In warfare, understanding terrain and timing is crucial. A general should only fight when the conditions are favorable, using speed and unpredictability to strike when the enemy is unprepared. Each type of terrain requires a different strategy, and the key to victory lies in exploiting these advantages while keeping movements secret and actions unexpected. Chapter left the 9 situations. Sun Tzu said, "In warfare, there are 9 situations: scattered ground, light ground, contentious ground, crossing ground, intersecting ground, heavy ground, dangerous ground, encircled ground, and dead ground." 1. Scattered ground is where rulers fight on their own land. 2. Light ground is where one enters the enemy's land but doesn't advance deeply. 3. Contentious ground is where both sides can benefit from occupying it. 4. Crossing ground is where both sides have access to it. 5. Intersecting ground is when there are 3 territories involved and the first to arrive can rally the people. 6. Heavy ground is when one enters deep into the enemy's territory with many cities behind. 7. Dangerous ground is where the terrain is difficult, like mountains, forests, or swamps. 8. Encircled ground is where entry is narrow and retreat paths are indirect, making the enemy vulnerable. 9. Dead ground is where, if a battle is not fought quickly, the situation becomes fatal. Strategy based on the 9 situations. In scattered ground, there is no need for battle. Focus on unifying your forces. In light ground, there is no end to the pursuit. Ensure cooperation and avoid overextending. In contentious ground, there is no attack. Pursue the enemy only when it is to your advantage. In crossing ground, there is no escape. Stay vigilant and prevent the enemy from exploiting weaknesses. In intersecting ground, forces should join. Ensure your forces remain united to maximize strength. In heavy ground, plunder and move fast. Continue supplying your army and avoid getting bogged down. In dangerous ground, proceed carefully. Avoid taking unnecessary risks and ensure proper preparation. In encircled ground, plot your strategy, block the enemy's retreat paths, and leave them with limited options. In dead ground, fight desperately, show no mercy, and act decisively before the situation becomes fatal. Further insights on warfare strategy. The best generals in ancient times could disrupt the enemy's ability to rely on its front and rear, making it difficult for their forces to support each other. By taking advantage of favorable moments, they attacked when advantageous and refrained when it was not. If the enemy's forces are well prepared and advancing, you should first deprive them of what they hold dear, making them vulnerable. The essence of military strategy is speed, taking advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness and striking where they least expect it. In the way of the guest, when deep in the enemy's land, focus on your purpose. The host cannot win in their own territory. If you raid fertile lands, your army will have enough food. Be cautious, avoid unnecessary labor, conserve strength, and apply unpredictable strategies. When cornered, fight bravely, but when there is no direction to go, remain firm. When deep in enemy territory, stay flexible and strike only when necessary. A general should always act calmly and with control, making decisions that confuse and mislead the enemy. Their plans should be clear to them, but difficult for others to anticipate. They should make sudden moves, burn bridges behind them, and lead their troops like driving a flock of sheep, guiding them to unexpected places and keeping the enemy guessing. When uniting three armies, they should be thrown into peril, for this is the true nature of a general's work. The nine situations are changes in strategy that depend on the terrain and the state of the enemy. These need to be carefully observed. If the situation is deep, focus your strength. If it's shallow, remain dispersed. Crossing into the enemy's land is a dead zone, and entering lightly is light ground. If the enemy is in a solid defensive position, it's encircled ground, and if there is no retreat, it's dead ground. Therefore, in scattered ground, focus on unifying your forces. In light ground, ensure cooperation. In contentious ground, pursue the enemy. In crossing ground, stay vigilant. In intersecting ground, make sure your forces stay united. In heavy ground, continue to supply your army. In dangerous ground, proceed cautiously. In encircled ground, block their retreat paths. In dead ground, show no mercy. To understand the strategy of great powers, it is essential to know the terrain, avoid over-relying on one's own strength, and avoid battles unless there is a clear advantage. A general must keep their army's movements secret and unpredictable. The key to victory is timing and unpredictability. When the enemy is vulnerable, strike swiftly and decisively. Great generals must act like a snake, where striking one part brings the other part into position, regardless of what the enemy tries to do. When in enemy territory, leaders should confuse the enemy's direction. They should make their plans seem random, while in reality, everything is meticulously orchestrated. When the general's orders are clear and firm, the army follows without hesitation, even under the most difficult circumstances. 1. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu's 9 situations provide a framework for understanding the fluid nature of warfare. A wise general will not only understand the terrain, but also adjust their tactics to fit the situation, using speed, psychological insight, and adaptability. The overarching strategy is to fight strategically and sparingly, with an emphasis on exploiting the enemy's weaknesses and avoiding unnecessary conflict. By mastering these principles, a general can achieve decisive victory. The attack by fire. Sun Tzu said, "There are 5 methods of attack using fire. 1. Burning soldiers in their camp. 2. Burning supplies and provisions. 3. Burning baggage trains and transport vehicles. 4. Burning armories and storage facilities. 5. Launching fire directly at the enemy forces." To use fire effectively in attacks, certain conditions must be met, and the materials needed to start a fire should always be ready. Fire attacks should be planned during dry weather and initiated on specific days when the moon aligns with certain constellations like the sieve, the wall, the wing, or the crossbar. These days are associated with strong winds that help spread fire. When using fire as a weapon, there are 5 potential outcomes to consider and prepare for. If fire breaks out inside the enemy's camp, attack immediately from the outside. If the fire starts but the enemy remains calm, hold off and wait for the right moment. If the fire reaches its peak, attack if possible. If not, remain in position. If the situation allows for an attack using fire from the outside, do so without waiting for a fire to start internally. Always start fires from the windward side. Never attack from the leeward side. Daytime winds tend to last longer, while nighttime winds quickly subside. Every army must be aware of these 5 outcomes of fire attacks, calculate the stars' positions, and select the proper days to act. Using fire in attacks demonstrates strategy and intelligence, while using water adds strength to an operation. Water can cut off an enemy's path but cannot destroy everything they have. Winning battles without following through to consolidate the victory leads to failure. Such negligence is called wasted effort. Therefore, wise rulers plan ahead and skilled generals prepare thoroughly. They only move when it's advantageous, use troops when there is something to gain, and fight only when the situation is critical. A ruler should not send troops into battle out of anger, nor should a general engage in combat due to frustration. Act only when the situation is beneficial. Stop when it is not. Anger can turn to joy, and frustration can give way to satisfaction. But a destroyed kingdom cannot be rebuilt, and the dead cannot return to life. Thus, an enlightened ruler exercises caution, and a good general remains vigilant. This is the way to preserve a nation's peace and keep the army intact. The attack by fire in modern warfare. In modern warfare, the concept of fire attacks or fire warfare has evolved significantly from its historical use, becoming more technical and controlled. While traditional fire attacks involved setting fires to destroy enemy forces, in modern warfare, it primarily involves the use of chemical weapons, incendiary bombs, and fire based tactics via advanced technology like drones. Here, we'll discuss three main ways fire warfare is applied in modern conflicts. 1. Chemical weapons. One of the most significant modern uses of fire in warfare is through chemical weapons. These weapons release toxic chemicals to incapacitate or kill enemy soldiers and civilians. Examples include nerve agents, mustard gas, and Agent Orange. These chemicals can cause destruction over large areas and can be considered a form of fire warfare due to their devastating burning effects on the environment and human health. Agent Orange, Vietnam War. Used extensively during the Vietnam War by the United States, Agent Orange was a herbicide that burned large areas of jungle, defoliated trees, and destroyed food supplies. It not only harmed military targets, but also caused long-term health issues for civilians and soldiers. Sarin gas. Another example is sarin gas, a chemical weapon that attacks the nervous system. While not fire in a literal sense, its effect can be similarly destructive, causing the target area to burn with chemical effects. The use of such agents has been banned by international law due to their indiscriminate and lethal nature. 2. Incendiary bombs and air raids. In modern warfare, the use of incendiary bombs and firebombing remains a critical method for causing widespread destruction. These bombs are designed to start fires that can destroy enemy infrastructure, military installations, and civilian areas. This method is most closely related to the traditional concept of fire warfare. Tokyo firebombing, World War II, one of the most infamous examples of incendiary bombing was the firebombing of Tokyo by the United States during World War II. The bombing raids used incendiary bombs to ignite fires across the city, causing massive destruction and killing thousands of civilians. This attack was a tactical move to weaken Japan's ability to continue the war. Gulf War, 1991. During the Gulf War, the U.S. used incendiary bombs to destroy Iraqi oil wells and military installations. These attacks created massive fires and served to disrupt the enemy's supply lines and resources, in line with the principles of fire warfare. 3. Drones and precision fire attacks. In the modern era, the concept of fire warfare has been adapted with drones and precision-guided weapons. Drones, or unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, are used to deploy flame-throwing devices, firebombs, or precision missiles to target specific enemy installations. The use of drones allows for more controlled and precise fire attacks, minimizing collateral damage while still achieving strategic objectives. Drone attacks and flamethrowers. Drones can carry incendiary payloads or fire-based weapons to strike enemy military bases or supply depots. These methods can initiate fire and disrupt the enemy's infrastructure with precision. Conclusion: in modern warfare, fire attacks are executed using advanced technology and weapons such as chemical weapons, incendiary bombs, and precision fire strikes through drones. These modern methods of fire warfare go beyond traditional fire attacks by incorporating chemicals and explosives to cause destruction. However, these methods often result in significant human suffering and environmental damage, leading to their regulation or prohibition under international law. Despite the technological advances, the ethical implications of using fire-based tactics remain a serious concern in modern warfare. The use of chemical weapons in particular has led to global treaties banning their use, but they still remain a form of fire warfare in modern conflicts. 2. Key insights and summary. Effective fire attacks require careful planning, favorable conditions, and precise timing, demonstrating strategic intelligence, while wise leaders and skilled generals act only when advantageous, avoiding impulsive decisions driven by emotions, ensuring the preservation of their nation and army. Chapter 3. The Use of Spies. Sun Tzu said, "When raising an army of 100,000, marching 1,000 miles, the expenses of the common people and the state's resources, the daily cost in gold, the disturbances both inside and outside, the weariness of the soldiers, and the difficulty in managing affairs, 70,000 households are needed. If a general fights for years to gain victory in a single day and seeks fame and reward, yet fails to understand the enemy's condition, this is the height of inhumanity. Such a person is not a true general, nor is he a proper assistant to the ruler, nor capable of leading a victory. Therefore, wise kings and capable generals who move and win rely on the knowledge of the enemy. This knowledge comes not from gods, not from appearance or predictions, and not from calculations or measurements, but from understanding the enemy's situation. There are 5 types of spies. 1. Local spies, spies who are sent from within the local population. 2. Internal spies, spies who come from within the enemy's officials or ranks. 3. Reverse spies, spies planted within the enemy's ranks to mislead them. 4. Dead spies, spies who spread false information to the enemy while the truth is conveyed through our own spies. 5. Spies, spies used to gather accurate, timely reports from the enemy. When all 5 types of spies are used together without revealing their methods, it is called the divine record, the treasure of a ruler. Among all military operations, nothing is more crucial than spies. The rewards for spies are greater than those for anyone else. The secrecy surrounding them is more vital than that of anything else. Only those with wisdom and understanding can effectively use spies. Only those with morality and righteousness can manage spies. Only those who are meticulous can gain valuable information from spies. It is subtle, it is intricate. Spies are used in many ways. If the information from spies reaches its target before the enemy is aware, both the spies and the messages they carry will perish. In warfare, before attacking a city or targeting a person for elimination, one must first understand the names of the commanders, the attendants, the gatekeepers, and the guards. One's spies must inquire and gather this information. The enemy's spies must be identified and they must be used to our advantage, leading them into traps. By doing this, one can use reverse spies effectively. With this knowledge, local and internal spies can be employed. With this, false reports can be made to deceive the enemy, and living spies can be directed to act at the proper time. The 5 types of spies must be known by the ruler, and the most important of these are reverse spies, which must be treated with great care. In the rise of the Yin dynasty, Yi Ji served under the Xia dynasty. In the rise of the Zhou dynasty, Lu Ya served under the Yin. Therefore, wise kings and capable generals who use intelligence through spies will undoubtedly achieve great success. This is the key to warfare and the foundation on which an army's movements depend. Sasta 1. The Normandy Invasion. The Normandy Invasion, D-Day, was a critical turning point in World War II, showcasing the power of strategic deception and intelligence. The success of Operation Bodyguard, particularly Operation Fortitude, demonstrated how misinformation and psychological warfare could decisively influence the outcome of a conflict. Number 1. False information and fake units. The Allies created a fictitious army group, the 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, which appeared to be stationed near Dover, seemingly poised to invade Calais. Inflatable tanks, dummy tents, and fake radio transmissions convinced the Germans to concentrate their defenses at Calais, far from the actual landing site. Number 2. Double agents and spies. Double agents, such as Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, played a pivotal role by feeding the Germans false intelligence. Garbo's reports reinforced the belief that Calais was the primary target, ensuring German forces remained misdirected even after the Normandy landings began. Number 3. Weather and psychological tactics. The stormy weather on June 6, 1944, led the Germans to dismiss the likelihood of a large-scale invasion. Key German commanders, including Erwin Rommel, were absent, believing an attack was improbable under such conditions. Conclusion. The Germans' miscalculation allowed the Allies to successfully breach the beaches of Normandy, establishing a foothold in Europe and initiating the liberation of occupied territories. Even after the invasion started, the Germans hesitated, suspecting the Normandy assault was a diversion. This misjudgment delayed reinforcements and weakened their response. This operation exemplifies the principles of deception and intelligence strategy as outlined in The Art of War. It underscores how well-executed misinformation coupled with strategic planning can achieve victory beyond sheer military strength. Key insights and summary. Sun Tzu emphasizes the critical role of spies in warfare. He identifies five types of spies: local, internal, reverse, dead, and living, and stresses that a wise ruler and capable general must understand and utilize these spies effectively to gain intelligence on the enemy. Success in war depends on using spies to gather accurate, timely information, manipulate the enemy, and ensure victory. The ability to manage spies with wisdom, morality, and meticulous planning is essential for achieving great success in battle. The Art of War Chapter Breakdown. This text discusses the interpretation and significance of the chapters in The Art of War, a treatise on ancient Chinese military philosophy and strategy. Each chapter presents a specific military principle or tactic. Overall, The Art of War views war as a last resort and emphasizes strategies to avoid war and achieve victory with minimal damage. Structure of the Art of War. 1. Initial planning, Shiqi. This chapter focuses on making careful plans before starting a war. 2. Resource management. This chapter deals with the management of resources and troops required for war. 3. Attack by stratagem, Mong. It emphasizes strategies to thwart the enemy's objectives before engaging in battle. 4. Tactical dispositions. This chapter stresses the formation and resources of the army, aiming to create a situation where defeat is impossible. 5. The moment of battle. It involves using energy, tea, and irregular tactics to create momentum in battle. 6. Strength and weakness. This chapter discusses methods to gain the initiative depending on the situation. 7. Strategy and maneuver, Jun. It focuses on securing objectives before battle begins. 8. Variation of tactics, Go Bien. This chapter addresses handling internal risks and political social relationships. 9. Strategic movement and positioning, Yin Jun. It discusses tactics related to mobility and troop movements. 10. Terrain. This chapter explains how tactics should vary depending on geographic and environmental factors. 11. The 9 situations. This chapter covers the different types of situations that can arise in a campaign. 12. The attack by fire. It explains how to use fire as a weapon to destroy the enemy's forces and resources. 13. The use of spies. This chapter highlights the strategic use of intelligence and spies, philosophical interpretations, odd and even, the appropriate use of irregular and conventional tactics to gain an advantage. This is related to the concept of yin and yang, yin yang, representing the balance between opposites and the creation of military opportunities. The way, in The Art of War, the nature of war is defined as deceptive, and there is a philosophical emphasis on minimizing war and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Core philosophy of the art of war. Sun Tzu's The Art of War emphasizes that war should always be a last resort, with the best strategy being to achieve victory without fighting. When conflict becomes unavoidable, careful planning, weakening the enemy's strength, and creating advantageous conditions are essential. During battles, minimizing damage and ensuring the groundwork for a decisive victory are central to Sun Tzu's approach. This work is not merely a military strategy manual, but a comprehensive theory of strategy that integrates warfare with political and economic considerations. The original Art of War was an extensive text of 82 chapters, but only 13 have survived to the present. The lost sections were likely omitted due to their diminished relevance as historical contexts evolved. Sun Tzu's focus on practicality and adaptability suggests that content no longer applicable to changing realities was naturally left behind. This evolution underscores the timeless and flexible nature of the art of war's core principles, which have endured and remained relevant across generations.